The winter air bit sharply as I stared out the window, my breath clouding the glass. Anne had left months ago, taking not just her things, but my sense of trust. She didn't just leave me. She left with a friend, her betrayal echoing louder in this small town than I ever imagined. Rumors painted me as the villain, whispers of emotional abuse eroding the fragments of my reputation. Then came Madison, a runaway with secrets in her eyes, seeking shelter in my shed on a freezing night. I offered her warmth, but her arrival stirred new questions and doubts in a town already skeptical of me. And just as I started to rebuild, Avery walked into my life, her guarded smile promising a chance at connection. But even she hesitated, her judgment clouded by the stories surrounding me. In the cold silence of Sailorton, trust was as fragile as the ice on the trees. How could I start anew when the past wouldn't let me go? I was walking into the dim kitchen to grab a beer when I noticed a quick flash of light outside my back window. It wasn't bright or lasting, just a brief flicker. The problem was, there shouldn't have been any lights. Behind my house was a wooded area, and the nearest neighbor was a good distance away. I left the refrigerator door and moved closer to the window. After a few seconds, I saw another quick glimmer. Someone was in my shed. Should I call for help? If someone was stealing from me, I definitely should. An old lawnmower and some tools weren't worth much. But I didn't like the idea of anyone taking my things. On the other hand, if it was Doug from next door borrowing a tool, I would feel terrible. He was over 70, and I didn't want to scare him. 8 o'clock on a cold February night felt a bit odd, but I had told him he could come over any time. I had been resting in the den and no lights were on. Maybe he thought I was asleep. Should I call out to see who it was? If it was a thief, that would only give them the chance to escape with my things. I quietly walked into the hallway and grabbed a golf club my dad had left there. I dialed 911 on my phone but didn't hit send. I cautiously opened the side door to sneak around the house. But then I changed my mind, putting the golf club under my arm and picking up an empty trash can. Moving as quietly as I could, I crept up to the shed and took a quick look through the window, ready to call for help and retreat if I saw something bad. Instead, I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Can I help you?" A girl with long hair spun around quickly. In a flash, she grabbed a backpack, and before I could react, she bumped into my side and dashed past me. She stumbled right into the trash can I had set down just outside the door. She fell, losing her backpack as she hit the ground. She quickly got up into a crouch and glanced at it, but it was too far away for her. I was holding a golf club, and I could barely see her expression in the dim light. She turned and ran off into the woods. I put my phone back in my robe pocket and picked up her backpack. I stepped into the shed and swung the sleeping bag over my shoulder that she had left behind. I looked toward the woods to see if she had come back, then walked back to the open door. Before going inside, I scanned the tree line but saw nothing in the darkness. "I have your things," I called out. "If you want them back, you can come and ask nicely. I imagine you will, since I heard it's going to get really cold tonight." I started to close the door but turned back for one last thing. "Don't mess with me or my things, and I won't call the police." I stepped inside and locked the door like always. 15 minutes later, I heard my front doorbell ring. I turned on the outside lights and looked out through the window. She had moved away from the porch and was standing at the foot of the steps, about 15 feet from me. "Can I have my stuff?" she asked as soon as I opened the door. "I think I said nicely," I replied. "May I have my things, please?" "Yes. But why were you in my shed?" "I heard it's going to be very cold tonight." I tilted my head. My voice was flat as I answered, "I think you misunderstand. I have your things. One little press." I showed her my phone. "And the police will come. I'll be gone before they arrive." I smiled, though it wasn't a warm smile. "True, but I would still have your bag, and the police will be looking for you, Madison Dwyer." She looked shocked that I knew her name. "You went through my things." "Why not? You were looking through mine. How much were you planning to take?" "I wasn't going to take anything," she insisted. I nodded. "Sure, there's not much value there. Besides, most of my tools have my name on them. But if you'd found something you thought you could sell, I bet it would be missing by morning." Her glance told me I was right. "Why?" She didn't answer. After a moment, she faced me again. "May I have my things, please? I'll leave." I thought about it for a moment. I could see that made her uneasy. "I said you could." I picked up her backpack from where it leaned against the wall and opened the storm door to drop it outside. "But I'd like an answer. Why would you take from me? Are you looking for food or something else?" She scoffed, and the porch light showed her disdain clearly. "Not everyone on the streets is like that. I just get hungry." She still hadn't moved to collect her things. I guessed she was unsure about coming closer, so I let the storm door close. I lifted my hands in a gesture of peace and stepped back a bit. She slowly moved forward, keeping her eyes on me as she came up the steps to grab her backpack. "If you're hungry, I have leftover lasagna in the fridge," I said loud enough for her to hear through the glass. She didn't say anything but stepped back off the porch and was gone. I locked the door and went to the den to see what was on TV. I figured it was about 50-50 whether a few small things would be missing from the shed in the morning. I settled on a Cheers rerun. I knew the show was full of silly jokes with a laugh track to make it seem funny, but my dad had really liked it. When he got sick, I found myself enjoying sitting with him as he watched it again for the 100th time. Things I once rolled my eyes at became a way to connect with him, reminding me of a time when life was simpler. My mind wandered to the woman I had seen in the diner that morning. It was just a quick glance as I turned away from the cashier, but she had caught my attention. For the 100th time recently, I thought about the women I noticed in bars, but I was too nervous about what might happen if I approached them. With my luck, I might accidentally hit on a police officer. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang again. I opened the door to see her standing at the bottom of the steps. I raised my brows in question. "May I please sleep in your shed? I promise I won't take anything," she asked. I looked at her. Her face looked cold, which was no surprise since the temperature was dropping fast. But I could also see signs of hunger or tiredness. She took my quietness as hesitance. "Please, none of your neighbors have sheds, and the police just sent me away from the bus stop. I promise I won't take anything." "Okay, you can," I said quickly before she could leave. "Or you can come inside, have something to eat, and then sleep somewhere much warmer than my shed. That bag you're carrying won't keep you warm, and you'll be uncomfortable at best." She hesitated, and we stood there in silence for what felt like a long time. Finally, her shoulders relaxed. I opened the door wider and said, "The kitchen is right back this way." She wouldn't look at me while I got things ready. When I asked if she liked lasagna, all I received was a quiet yes. She asked for water when I offered her something to drink. I placed 2 pieces of lasagna in the microwave. Then I grabbed some bread I had cut earlier and spread butter on a couple of slices. By the time I poured a glass of water for her and a glass of milk for myself, the microwave beeped. "Eat up," I said. It was a calm 10 minutes. I didn't ask questions, and she only offered a soft, "Thank you." After we finished, I rinsed the plates quickly and put them in the dishwasher. "Come on," I said. In my house, the master bedroom is right at the top of the stairs, closed off by a pair of French doors that were open. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed her weary expression as she walked towards them. "No, that's my room," I said, pretending not to see her look. "The spare one is down the hall to the right. The downside is it doesn't have a private bathroom. You'll need to use the one across the hall." I pointed in that direction. "The upside is the washer, and dryer are also in there, so you can wash your clothes if you want. Hang on." I left her for a moment to grab another bathrobe from my closet. "Here, wear this while your clothes are washing. Feel free to check the kitchen if you get hungry. Otherwise, I'll see you in the morning. I wake up early and I'm tired." I started down the hall but turned back. "Oh, the doors lock from the inside, and you need a key to open them. Please don't try to force a window or anything. It's really cold outside. I'll let you out whenever you want," I added silently to myself, thinking, as long as you're not taking too much of my stuff with you. I wasn't actually tired, and I hadn't slept in that bed for a long time, but I thought it would be best to give her space. As I turned to go into my room, I noticed her watching me from the door of the guest room. About 15 minutes later, I heard the washing machine start, followed by the sound of the shower. I waited until everything stopped, plus another 10 minutes. Then I quietly went down to the living room, turning down the TV to a low volume. The next morning, I heard her coming down the stairs quietly. I wondered if she was going to try to sneak away. I wasn't really worried she would leave with a packed bag because I hadn't lied about the doors needing a key. However, I could see the front door from where I sat, and I watched her drop her bag next to it and head toward the kitchen. "In the living room," I called out. She jumped a little, surprised, and then came in. "Thank you. If you let me go, I'll be out of your way." "I was actually thinking about breakfast," I replied. I wasn't sure if her thin frame was from nature or not eating enough. I noticed she looked better. Her dark hair was no longer messy under a hat. Her jeans were clean, and the freckles on her nose showed now that the smudge from last night was gone. "You look good." She just stared at me. I ignored it. "I should probably tidy myself up, too. My hair could use some fixing," I said with a smile, running my hand through my messy hair. I stood up and led the way to the kitchen. "Do you know how to make pancakes from scratch?" I asked over my shoulder. "No," she replied. "Okay, how about French toast?" "Yes." "Great. There's bread in the pantry, eggs in that bowl over there, butter and milk in the refrigerator, and cinnamon in that cabinet." I pointed to the pot rack. Why don't you make some for both of us while I go get dressed? I like 3 slices. Without waiting for a response, I went upstairs to take a quick shower and change. Later, after we finished eating, I asked, "So, what now?" "What do you mean?" "I'm guessing last night was not part of your big plan, so what's next?" She looked down and didn't answer right away, but I patiently waited. Finally, she said, "I was thinking about going somewhere warmer, down south, to look for a job, maybe waiting tables." "Sounds like a good plan. How does my shed fit into that?" She hesitated a bit before replying. After a moment, she said, "I don't have enough money for the bus to Florida yet. I wanted to find a job to earn some, but that didn't work out, and I needed a place to stay." "You chose Sailorton to look for a job?" I asked, surprised. "We're not even a real town." She shook her head, but answered more quickly this time. "I got a ride with some college kids as far as Penn State. I had enough left for a bus from there to Pittsburgh, but I fell ill on the bus and had to get off in Johnstown. I stayed there a night, and then a guy gave me a ride to Greensburg, saying I could find work, but—" She paused. "But—" I encouraged her after a few seconds. She looked embarrassed. "But I thought it was a good idea to get out when he stopped for gas in a place called Ligonier." She pronounced it like it was French, and I made a little sound. "Don't let anyone around here hear you say that. It's pronounced Ligonier," I said, stressing the simple vowels and strong consonants. I smiled to show I was kidding and to ease the mood. I could guess that some version of the rides cost gas, grass, or something else talk had made her leave during the stop. But that's still about 10 miles from here, right? One of the women at the diner was nice and told me the hardware store here had a help wanted sign. She dropped me off on her way home. "They weren't hiring?" "I thought they were." She shrugged. "They had a sign up, but they told me no. They said I wasn't what they needed. Maybe it was because of 2 days without a shower. I don't know." I could see her eyes starting to water. I can't seem to catch a break lately. I looked away to avoid making her feel worse. I noticed her sigh and saw her quickly wipe her eyes out of the corner of my vision. "Probably just as well," she said. "I didn't think about the fact that small towns wouldn't have youth hostels or anything. Anyway," she stood up. "If you could let me out, I should go. Do you know when the bus comes through?" "Not really." "Do you have money for the fare?" "Since I ate for free," she blushed at that. "Yeah, enough for Pittsburgh." She glanced down at her sneakers and then back at me. "Thank you for what you did and for not calling the police last night." I nodded. "Why Pittsburgh?" She shrugged. "Cities have jobs and affordable places to stay. I hope to find one. Other than that, it's just a stop on my way to Florida." "Okay." We stepped into the hallway and I unlocked the front door while she grabbed her backpack. "Hey, Madison, can you look at me for a moment?" She turned, confused. "Is there anything in that pack?" I asked, watching her eyes, "that I might regret later today?" I could see she was offended. "I promised I wouldn't take anything from you. I may be in a tough spot, but I'm not a bad person." I raised my hands. Fair enough. Though she was still upset, she forced a smile and offered her hand to shake. "Thanks. Oh, I don't even know your name." "Will." "Well, thank you, Will. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a while." I watched her walk down my sidewalk and turn toward the bus stop. 2 hours later, I drove to Underwood for my usual late-morning coffee, listening to Green Day's Boulevard of Broken Dreams at full volume. As I passed the bus stop, I noticed someone huddled in the shelter. I turned down the volume and rolled down the window. "Is everything all right?" I called out. She shook her head. "The bus comes at 11:25. I parked my car a bit further along, pulling over to the side of the road. With the engine running, I got out and waved to her, but she didn't move, so I walked back to her. "Come on, get in the car. It's really cold out here." "I'm okay." I shook my head, feeling frustrated, and reached to grab her backpack off the bench. Her hands were tucked inside her sleeves, so I got it easily. "Come on," I said. She followed me and climbed into the passenger seat after I tossed her pack in the back. I turned the heater on high and directed the vent right at her. Honestly, all I wanted was to help someone who seemed to be struggling. I could wait for my coffee and pastry a little longer to do that, but then a car drove by and I noticed Mrs. Thompson looking over. I nodded in her direction, but when she recognized who it was, she looked away without responding. A familiar struggle bubbled up. "Forget you, I don't need your approval," versus "I'll prove myself." I knew myself. This inner conflict would always be there because neither side was strong enough to win. I loved living in a place where my family had been for generations, and pushing against it didn't mean I wasn't part of it. But how do you show people who won't open their eyes, who make up their minds before really seeing? I looked at Madison, and in that moment, my inner battle let the second side win, at least for today. "Do you just need a job? Why? Are you hiring?" "No." I watched as her brief hope faded away quickly. I took out my phone. "Hi, Carrie, it's Will Danruther. How are you and the boys?" Carrie's warm voice, always close to a laugh, replied, "Fine, Will. How are you?" "I'm doing well, thanks. The reason I called is to check if you still need someone to help out." Madison's eyes widened when she heard that. "Yes, I do." "Would you consider someone if I brought her by?" "A friend of yours?" "More like someone I know. She's 18 and is looking for a job right now." "Sure, come by." "Great. I'll be there in a bit." "Thanks, Carrie." I looked over at Madison. Carrie Schaefer owns a stable just down the road. She's a grandmother taking care of her 2 grandsons while her daughter is away. She needs someone to help in the afternoons while she looks after the kids. You don't have to know anything about horses. She has help for that. She looked uncertain. "What do motels around here cost for a day? Is there even one nearby?" "You can stay in my guest room. Just give me whatever Carrie pays you for an hour of work each day, and that can cover your meals and stuff. You'll have enough for a ticket to Florida in a week or so." I could see a hint of caution in her eyes, but it was softer today. "Why are you helping me?" I shrugged. "It's no trouble for me to lend a hand," I said. I let her think it over. Finally, she nodded, so I headed to Bothwell Farm stables. I walked into the barn while she went into the office. Like many local kids, I had worked here one summer, cleaning stalls and spreading hay. It wasn't my favorite job, but it helped me save for my first truck. If only Caroline Frey, who rode horses here, had noticed me, it would have made the summer more fun. But shy 16-year-olds usually don't catch the attention of pretty 17-year-old girls. Down the long aisle, I saw a woman come out of a stall, dressed warmly like I was and carrying a bag. She gave me a quick smile as she passed on her way to the office. "Carrie's interviewing someone right now," I said as she reached for the door. I suddenly felt a bit rude. "Sorry for interrupting." She shook her head. "No worries. I'm not in a rush." She sat down on the bench outside the office, putting her bag at her feet. I noticed the emblem she was wearing. "You don't look like Jim Harvey." Her eyebrows lifted. "Glad to hear that," she replied. I sensed she wanted to move on as she quickly shifted her gaze away. I returned what was likely a nervous smile and stepped outside. Somehow the cold breeze that slipped under my jacket felt warmer than the chill I felt inside. Half an hour later, Madison returned, looking happier than I had seen her before. "5 hours a day," she announced. "That's more than I expected. I hope you were clear with Carrie that it's a temporary thing?" She nodded. I explained it. She said we'll talk about it when it comes up. Madison was quiet for the rest of the ride to the diner for coffee. We got a booth and ordered some food since it was later than my usual visit. After a moment of silence, I realized the quiet felt normal to me, but she seemed uneasy. I decided to learn more about my unexpected roommate. "Where are you from?" "Oregon," she replied, surprising me. I had seen her birth certificate that said she was born in Medford, but I thought she was more local now. "I know, it's a long way away," she said. "I came to Boston to see my dad. I saw him, but it was just a short visit, and here I am." "But you're not going back to Oregon?" She shook her head and fiddled with her spoon. I wasn't sure what to ask next. "No other family?" I tried. "In Oregon." I could tell I had touched a sensitive subject. She glanced at me and then looked out the window. "I'm not wanted by the police if that's what you're worried about." "I wasn't," I said honestly. She nodded and continued looking outside. Then in a quieter voice, she said, "I had problems with my stepdad." She left it at that. I sat in silence again, which was typical for me when I visited the diner, aside from chatting with a few waitresses if it wasn't too busy. It seemed Madison didn't like the silence. She began to share more than I expected. My parents had raised me with the idea that if they wanted to know something, they would ask me directly and expected an honest answer. Otherwise, it was best to keep things to myself. They cared for me a lot, but they valued independence. I was taking medication for my skin, and my stepdad found them one day. That night, he came into my room and said that if I was keeping the boys happy, there was no reason I couldn't keep him happy too. I felt anger rise inside me, but wasn't sure how to respond to something like that. I managed to push him out of my room by threatening to scream, but I knew he would be back. My mom travels sometimes for work, leaving just him and me alone in the house often. I kept my voice calm. "What happened then?" "I told my mom. She got angry and said she was ashamed I would lie about a good man just because I didn't like that he replaced my dad. Then she called him, his name is Dave, into the room, told him what I said, and made me apologize for lying." "Did you?" She smirked. "She thinks I did." I said, "I'm really sorry for what I told my mom." She didn't know that I was just upset about talking to her. But Dave understood. "Did he say anything to you about it?" "No." He just looked at me, and I knew it wasn't done. That night, I packed my bag, took my birth certificate, and left. I took some cash from their wallets and her ATM card. I didn't know the PIN to his card, or I would have taken that too. I only got $300 and then I tossed the card. I didn't want them to find me through it. I doubt your mom would send you away, even if she was really angry, I said. She shook her head. It's not that. I just didn't want to go back. I was still a minor. I was a bit surprised. I had looked at her birth certificate earlier to see how old she was. That's how I knew she was 18. She noticed my surprise. It was Labor Day. My birthday is in October. I've been away for 5 months. She shrugged as if it didn't matter. I went to see my dad in Boston. I tried to buy a plane ticket, but they said my parents had to do it since I wasn't 18, so I took a bus from Oregon to Massachusetts. It was a long trip. If you were only 17, why didn't you stay with your dad? I asked, needing to know. His new wife didn't want me around, she replied, sounding upset. And she said, she stopped talking and started to get up. I need to find a restroom. I could tell something was wrong. When she came back, her eyes were red, showing she had been crying. I left some money on the table before she sat. Let's go back to the house. The ride was quiet for a few moments. Then she said, I'm sorry. You don't have to be. After another brief silence, she continued. She told me my dad left my mom when I was 11 because he found out I wasn't really his daughter. I couldn't believe she shared that. It caught me off guard again. I thought the truth would be best, even if it was hard to hear. After that long, you should have felt like a daughter no matter what happened before. She looked at me with a strange look that was hard to interpret. Maybe she agreed, or maybe she didn't know what to think. Then she looked out the window. Since then, I've been trying to make it on my own. It's been tough, and the cold is getting to me, so here I am. Well, you don't have to worry about a mean stepmother at my place, I said, trying to lighten things up. You can stay until you get back on your feet. I don't know how to repay you for this, she said. No rush, I replied. You can thank me when you figure it out. After that, she seemed distant around the house. I had work to do, so I told her I would be busy at my desk in my room. I'll be in my room until bedtime, so feel free to use anything in the kitchen. I'll see you in the morning. This isn't how I usually spend my evenings. Normally, I work until late and then go downstairs to watch television. But like last night, I thought it would be better to keep to myself. After my last work call, I lay on the bed with a book. I heard the shower turn on and decided to wait for about 10 more minutes before heading downstairs. Just as I finished a chapter, there was a soft knock at the door. Yes? The door opened, and Madison walked in wearing a robe I had lent her. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She barely met my gaze as she came closer to the edge of the bed. For a moment, she fumbled with the robe before letting it slip away. She was only wearing her underwear and reached for the covers. Whoa, Madison! This caught her attention, and she looked me in the eye for the first time. Thank you, Will, for everything. She moved to sit down. I moved back a bit, realizing what was happening. Stop! Wait, please! She paused, looking surprised. I got off the bed and picked up the robe from the floor. Put this back on, please. She held it to her chest but didn't wear it. What's going on? I just wanted to say thank you. It's fine. No. She looked taken aback. Oh, do you, not like girls? I chuckled a bit awkwardly. I like girls just fine, but no. Why not? I struggled to find the right words. Because you're 18. That's legal. I know, but I searched for how to explain my thoughts. If you weren't facing these home issues and trying to find safety, would you really be interested in a 35-year-old guy? I shook my head. No, you wouldn't. She didn't say anything. I didn't expect her to. If she admitted that, it would imply she didn't find me attractive, and I sensed she didn't want to upset me. I tried to push away the part of my mind that was caught up in the fantasy of the situation. She was very cute, but she was so much younger than me. Regardless of how charming you might think I am, and you are, there's a part of me that realizes this is wrong, and that's what I'll have to deal with. So, no. Please put the robe on. I looked away as she wrapped the robe around herself. Wow, I said quietly, noticing her eyes beginning to tear up. What's wrong? Please don't kick me out. I misunderstood. I'm not going to kick you out. Just stop crying. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to think clearly. Now that the situation was calmer, it was easier for me to regain my composure. Listen, when I said, figure it out, I didn't mean to think about how to impress someone. I meant to sort out your life. And when I said, thank me, I was hoping you would just say it with words. She still seemed scared and a bit desperate, but at least she stopped crying for now. I shook my head. I had to look away. This was really awkward. Maybe I was wrong. I saw your face last night when we went up the stairs, and I realized you expected something to happen. I should have said something then, but I sometimes struggle to find the right words. You knew? I... Her voice faded away. I could see that now that she was a little less panicked, she felt just as awkward as I did. I'm not that kind of person, Will, she said quietly. That was easier to respond to. I never thought that about you. I just guessed it wasn't your first time making tough choices. I figured that's why you left Ligonier. I looked at her to see how she reacted, and I saw her eyes begin to water again. Now why are you crying? I asked, feeling frustrated. Because not all guys are like you. All right, I'm going downstairs to watch some TV. I'll see you in the morning. I hurried to put on my slippers, grabbed a robe, and left the room. When she walked into the kitchen the next morning, it felt awkward. I handled it the way I usually did. I kept quiet and focused on making pancakes. She, it seemed, wanted to address the tension. Will? I sighed and turned to her. Last night, she started. I interrupted her. Look, I really don't want to talk about this. Can we just pretend it didn't happen? But I don't want you to think... I cut her off again. I don't. I truly meant it when I said I understood you had to make tough choices, and I don't judge you for them. I just don't want to discuss this kind of thing with someone younger than me. Honestly, I struggle to talk with women my own age. I noticed a small smile flicker on her face at that. Go ahead, laugh. I write software for a living, I said with a hint of defiance. Guess what that says about my skills with girls? My face turned red, and I turned back to the stove. Can we just drop it? I mumbled. She didn't respond. After a moment, she went over, got 2 plates, some utensils, and took the maple syrup out of the pantry. It was a quiet meal. I felt embarrassed. I wasn't sure what she was thinking. I need to walk the dog, I announced. She seemed surprised, since there had been no sign of a dog since she arrived. He stays with my neighbor, I explained. Opening the back door, I whistled. Moments later, I saw Madison's face brighten as a cheerful black and white dog bounded over the small hedge and came racing inside, wagging his tail excitedly. This is Lucy. Just hold out your hand and let her sniff you. She won't bite. Lucy moved closer and sniffed Madison a couple of times, then gave her a quick lick on the hand before racing back to me, her tail wagging so much that it hit the cabinet hard. It was a long walk as I tried to think about what happened the night before. The truth was, Madison had a look that I found appealing. She seemed a bit thin, but she had a friendly feel that captured my attention. A small part of me thought, hey, you could have that. I wondered how I was different from Dave. It took me a while to calm down enough to figure it out. It wasn't just that he liked her looks. She was pretty, after all. The real issue was that he acted on his feelings when he should not have. He was her stepfather, not just some random guy. It was more than that. He asked her to go away but didn't listen when she said no. For those reasons, I would have gladly stood up to him, even though she didn't mean much to me. I finally relaxed and saw things more clearly. I had said no, even though she hadn't really pushed me away. I didn't want to add to my regrets. When we returned from our walk in the woods, I started splitting some wood. With the cold weather, the wood stove needed a lot. While it wasn't as extreme as the heavy snow from 2 years ago, this year was still challenging. Lincoln's birthday brought us more than a foot of snow and very cold temperatures that only warmed up a bit. Splitting wood felt peaceful to me. At first, it was a slow task until I warmed up enough to take off my heavy coat. I got into a rhythm with my music Pearl Jam today, blocking out the sounds of cars passing by and just focusing on the axe and the wood. I kept Doug stocked with firewood, finally convincing him that I enjoyed it rather than just helping him out. After a couple of minutes, Madison appeared. Do you need some help? She asked carefully, pulling out one earbud. It's a one-person job. You could take a basket of kindling in if you'd like, I suggested, pointing to a pile of smaller pieces off to the side. There's a box next to the wood stove. Just then, Lucy came running by, chasing a bird that was high up in a tree. That dog always carried Hope with her. Why does your dog live with your neighbor? Madison asked. I paused. I can't talk and swing an axe at the same time. Give me a few minutes and I'll come inside. I looked over just in time to see Doug open his back door. He had his usual unreadable expression, but his gaze was on Madison. I waved him over. This is my neighbor, Doug, I said to Madison as he approached. She was still watching Lucy, who had given up on the bird and now wanted to see if anyone would throw a stick. This is Madison, I said to Doug. She's staying with me for a while. Doug nodded at her briefly, his face still calm. I could tell she was unsure how to respond, so she picked up the stick Lucy had dropped and threw it. Doug and I both tried not to smile as Lucy sprinted after the stick, caught it on the first bounce, and raced back to drop it at Madison's feet, looking at it intently, just like border collies do. She knows you're a soft touch, Doug said, observing the scene. Madison needs a ride over to Bothwell at 2:30 and I have a call at 2, I mentioned. Could you take her? Sure, just come over, Doug replied, giving Madison a nod before he called out to Lucy and walked back home. After filling the wood box, showering, and getting dressed, I spent nearly an hour. When I went downstairs, I found the breakfast dishes clean and drying on the rack. Madison was sitting at the table, waiting. Will, I need a couple of things from the store. Can you tell me where it is? There's a small store about a mile down to the left, but it's pretty cold outside. I usually go for coffee around 10:30. If you want to come, we can stop there. If not, I'll grab what you need. I'll come with you, if that's okay. Just then, the phone rang. It was the Hyderabad team. Within moments, I realized it was another one of those emergencies the project manager created whenever things went wrong. 11 people would sit around on a conference call while one person tackled the problem they'd caused. I sighed and muted my line. Is your stuff urgent? I asked Madison. She shook her head. Have Doug stop when he takes you. This might take a while. It was a little after 7:30 when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Madison get in. The driver seemed to be the woman I had met earlier. I opened the door. I wasn't ready to trust Madison with a key yet and told her, "Dinner will be ready soon if you'd like to freshen up." Dinner was quiet again. Towards the end, she spoke up. Doug asked me what I thought of you. Doesn't he know you? What did you tell him? I asked. She shifted a bit but responded, I told him you seem nice. I could sense that she was being careful with her words. Not wanting to make her feel awkward, I replied gently, Doug has known me since I was young. He's just looking out for you. That's how he is. I began to head to my room but turned back. Who drove you home? Her name's Avery. She's working part-time and offered to give me rides. The next day was much the same. I found myself feeling bored on the phone while the team sorted out one issue after another with their latest update. Since my things were working well, I got through a good part of Russell's Swamplandia. Madison seemed a little more settled with her situation. Honestly, I didn't feel too invested in her, and if she left, that was fine. Still, it was nice to have someone to chat with over dinner, and it felt good to help her out. It was part of trying to rebuild my own image. The third day brought a change, but not for the better. It was a bit warmer, and I was on a ladder fixing a gutter that had been damaged by ice and wind. Avery arrived to take Madison to work, giving a short beep of the horn to let her know she was there. I nodded at her. She had made it clear on the first day that she didn't want to talk, and I had learned to ignore those signals from people. But it seemed like it was fine for her to start a chat. I heard her window roll down. You're Will, right? I turned back to the car. Yep, I'm Avery. I work over at Bothwell. Glad to hear that, I said, wondering if she remembered our earlier talk and realized I was just echoing her words. Ice? She asked, nodding at what I was working on. Yep. I wasn't really engaging in the conversation since I was focused on fixing things, and her talking from the car while I balanced on the ladder made things a bit awkward. There was silence for a few seconds, but then she spoke again. Madison says you have a border collie, but you don't keep it in your house. You leave it at a neighbor's place. Those dogs have a lot of energy. A lot of people realize they're not easy to handle. Since I didn't know her well, I thought she might be trying to relate, but I could hear the judgment in her voice, as if she were saying, Great, another person who got a dog and can't manage it. Yes, she definitely has a lot of energy, I replied with a slight smile. She nodded a little, and I felt like she was thinking the same thing. Yep, another careless dog owner. I saw your neighbor outside. He's getting older. At that moment, I could have explained why Lucy was staying with Doug. But honestly, her earlier comments felt a bit rude, and starting a chat with thinly veiled judgment about my dog didn't sit well with me. I was tired of people making assumptions. Doug's fine. You don't need to worry about it. I turned back to my work, but she wasn't finished. Town shelters can be tough for dogs, but there are rescue places I know of. There's one in Morris, New York that helps border collies. I held back my frustration and replied, Thanks, but I don't need a rescue. Why did you take Madison in? I mean, it's a kind thing to do, but what made you decide to help her? Her question surprised me. I gave the same answer I told Madison, barely glancing back at her. It's not a big deal to be helpful. Is that something you do often? Letting out a sigh, I stepped down from the ladder and walked over to the car. If there's something on your mind, Avery, just say it. She stood her ground. I just wonder why a man your age would help a woman that young who is in a tough spot. No offense. You get what I mean, right? Oh, I got it, totally. Still, I felt a little offended, but I also realized how it might seem from the outside. For a moment, I felt like a hypocrite. Just 2 days ago, I was angry that no one asked for my help. Everyone deserves at least one chance, even her. She needed help, and I'm here to provide it. Like I said, it costs me nothing, and I don't expect anything back. If she feels uncomfortable, she can leave any time. But you live alone, right? Madison told me that. I stiffened. She was new here. I knew everybody, so I was aware of that. But how new? Why do you mention that? Instead of answering, she pressed on. Look, I can't take her in because I'm staying in my uncle's spare room for now. But maybe I could talk to Carrie about... I was done. Her bringing up Carrie was the last straw. If she had just spoken to Carrie, someone who really knows me, this chat would have gone differently. Or maybe not, given what I knew about her. I interrupted. Did Madison say anything bad about me? No, but... I cut her off again. Then Avery, that's 3. What? She looked confused. 3 strikes. You were rude when I tried to have a nice chat 2 days ago. Then you made a comment about my dog. Now you're making suggestions about my help with Madison. So, Avery? What? Forget it. I turned away, ignoring the shock on her face, and headed back inside. The gutter could wait. I passed Madison, who was coming down the stairs. When she saw my expression, she stopped. Is something wrong? I shook my head. I took out my key and handed it to her. Here. So you can go if you need to. I stepped past her, ignoring her surprised look, and went upstairs to change into something cleaner. When Madison got home that evening, she was quiet. About halfway through dinner, she decided it was time to discuss what happened. Apparently not talking about something wasn't an option for her. Avery told me she got pretty upset with her. Did she say why? She said you thought she was rude. I guess she doesn't think much of me. Avery paused, as if she was deciding what to say next. I told her she was wrong about you letting me stay here. I didn't go into details, but I believed you weren't trying to get close to me. I shrugged. About that thing in the barn the first time she saw me. Well, please don't be mad, but I kind of understand how she felt. Girls get tired of being approached all the time. I wasn't trying to approach her. She didn't know that. When a guy starts talking to you out of nowhere, it usually means he's interested. I thought about it. I think I see it differently, but okay. That wasn't what really upset me. She nodded, understanding it wasn't about that. After a moment, she changed the topic. Why doesn't Lucy stay here? You never told me. Doug has some opinions that not everyone around here agrees with, and he talks about them openly. A few months ago, some kids damaged his property and threw a rock with a nasty note at his window. It bothered him, and he worries they might do something worse next time. I took my plate to the sink to clean it. I think he's overreacting. I have an idea who they were, and they were probably just being silly after drinking. The next day, they were likely worried about getting in trouble. But Doug's older and has trouble hearing. I can't really blame him for being anxious. Lucy barks at anyone who comes into the yard, which helps. She gets along with Doug, so I let him borrow her. He feels safer. If he's still concerned in the spring, I'll think about getting him a dog of his own. Oh, that's something I could have explained to Avery if she had asked instead of thinking I didn't want to take care of a dog. She seemed a bit uneasy. I guess she was starting to see Avery as a friend. Whatever. On Friday, I heard a knock on my front door. Looking out the window, I saw Avery's Subaru. I was surprised because it was a little early and she had a key now. I owe you an apology, Avery said when I opened the door. Madison was nowhere in sight. For what? She looked confused, as if it should be clear, so I asked again. For what exactly do you think you owe me an apology? My direct question seemed to throw her off. I guess she expected something more casual like, it's not a big deal. A year ago, maybe that would have worked. Not now. I definitely owe you an apology for what I said about you and your dog. I shouldn't have done that. The only reason I have is that, as a vet, even a vet for large animals, I see too many animals in bad situations and I'm tired of dogs ending up in shelters. But that's not a strong excuse, and I'm sorry. Apology accepted. I wasn't entirely unkind, and just because I wouldn't let someone walk all over me didn't mean I couldn't accept an apology. I decided to leave it there since she still had some leeway to make up for it. She must have felt that when I didn't say more. As for what you think was a mistake, I can't really apologize for that. Unlike your dog, where I admit I jumped to conclusions, I wasn't accusing you. But I don't think it's wrong to look out for a young woman in her position. I had already asked her a few questions, and her answers were a bit strange. I wanted to get my own sense of the situation. When I remained silent, she continued, looking a bit uneasy. You don't agree? I don't like when people judge who I am without knowing me, and I raised my hand to stop her from interrupting. Even with your changed view on judging, what you suggested was very clear. You had decided enough to step in. Her eyebrows shot up. I'm sorry if I seemed accusatory. That wasn't my aim. I'm just a very protective person, and I was trying to be honest. I spoke to her more after our conversation, and she calmed my worries. Her answers were still odd, but despite what she's been through, she seems a bit innocent and open. I think I understand why she believes you aren't a threat. Your reactions, even with some strong words, are reassuring. I'm glad you think so. You're not going to give an inch on this, are you? Why not? We don't know each other well enough for that kind of talk, Avery. Are you still upset because I didn't respond when you were friendly with me? I wasn't being flirty. I was just being friendly. She looked at me in disbelief. I've had people trying to be flirty with me almost every day since I arrived. It's been constant. You're not the same? She must have noticed my doubt and looked a little embarrassed at how that sounded. No, she said. I'm not trying to act like I'm something special. She blushed slightly. I mean, I've seen prettier women even in this small town, but I do get a lot of attention because of my figure, and the first thing you said was about how I looked. I gave her a tight smile. First of all, that's not what I meant. I wasn't commenting about your looks. I saw your bag and thought you didn't look like the usual vet. That was just a joke. A little silly, maybe, but a joke. Second, I've never really seen what you look like. You always wear a big puffy coat that goes down to your knees. You look like the Michelin Man from the knees up. She looked down for a moment and seemed uncertain. I knew I had caught her off guard. Actually. She paused, her face turning a bit pink. You're right. She let out a big breath and then smiled while reaching out her hand. Hi, I'm Avery Liacci. I'm pretty new here. I'm a vet for larger animals. I often make quick judgments about people, maybe too often. Sometimes I say foolish things that come off as me being too full of myself. I heard you're Will Danruther. You're kind to animals, but a bit tough like a cactus. I looked at her hand for a moment. To be honest, I was feeling a bit lonely, and she seemed nice. I weighed that against the annoyance I still felt. The annoyance might have won, but I was taught to be polite, so I shook her hand. Will Danruther, I love my dog. I don't go after younger people or anything like that. I sometimes do show interest in women, but usually only after I get to know them a bit, not by starting with a comment about how they look. Her eyebrows lifted, but she looked thoughtful instead of upset. Tough as a cactus, indeed. She took a step back. Nice to meet you. I have to go check on something related to a horse, literally, she said with a playful glint in her eyes. But I hope to see you again. Where's Madison? Someone else is giving her a ride today. I watched her walk away, but it was hard to tell much about her. She seemed nice, but I figured she must look good since many people found her appealing, though not in an over-the-top way. There were plenty of other pretty women in Sailorton, especially a group called the Frays. A couple of hours later, a red pickup truck pulled into the driveway. I didn't recognize it, and the sun made it tough to see who was driving. After a few minutes, Madison stepped out of the passenger side. The same truck appeared again the next morning. Morning, Will. I'm having breakfast with some friends, if that's okay, Madison said as she put on her coat. Of course, I replied. After work. Could I talk to you about something? Sure. She smiled and left quickly. I headed out around my usual time to grab coffee and a pastry at the diner. Ellen, I greeted the cashier as she pointed to my favorite table. Thanks, Linda, I said to the waitress when she brought me a large coffee and a pecan Danish without me having to ask. It was a slow morning, so Linda sat down across from me to chat for a bit. I liked all the staff, but Linda was my favorite. After a few minutes, a group walked in and she joked, "No rest for the wicked." I looked over and saw some familiar faces, and I was surprised to see Madison with them. She didn't see me sitting in the corner, so I decided not to interrupt her. I finished what I was doing and stood up to leave. Madison noticed my movement. She whispered something and seemed unsure whether to call me over. I smiled and nodded, then headed to the register. As I turned to leave, I noticed the others at the table were watching me go. Did you have fun? I asked when she arrived home about an hour and a half later. She nodded. I didn't know if you'd want to meet them. I've known most of them forever, I interrupted. Alyssa is my distant cousin. Another cousin works with Drew and Ryan part-time at the stable. I didn't know the other girl, though. Brianna's from Mount Pleasant. She's Ryan's girlfriend. She paused, then added, I need to get ready for work. She started to turn away, hesitated, frowned, then hurried upstairs. 20 minutes later, I heard a car horn from the driveway. I could see Drew driving this time. Dinner was a strange time. Madison was quiet and distant, like she had been the first couple of days. Finally, I asked, This morning you said you wanted to talk about something. She looked surprised and shook her head. Never mind. It wasn't important. Okay. Something had changed her mind, and I could guess why. I watched her with a calm face and waited. She caught my gaze, looked away, then met my eyes again. Finally, she said, When they found out who I was staying with, the others mentioned you used to be married. I nodded, but I didn't say more. This wasn't a surprise. She paused, then quickly said, "They said you two weren't getting along, so she moved to New York." They? Drew and Ryan. Alyssa didn't comment, and Brianna's new to the area. Did they share any details about why we weren't getting along? She shifted uncomfortably and didn't reply. I felt a familiar irritation rising. Let me guess. Someone told you that people think I was the cause of her leaving? That it was too much for her, and when things got really bad, she left for New York? She didn't respond, which told me I was right. My face tightened as the irritation turned into anger, something I felt every time someone judged me without knowing the truth. I opened my mouth to share my feelings, but stopped, noticing something in her expression. She wasn't looking at me with anger. Instead, her gaze shifted, avoiding direct eye contact, as though she was watching my feet from the corners of her eyes. I noticed her tense shoulders, her hands tightly held in her lap, and how she sat at the edge of her seat. She looked afraid. I understood her fear. Older men had not treated her well so far. She might be questioning if I was someone who would react poorly to her concerns. It took a moment for me to push my own feelings aside and calm myself down. I reminded myself that Madison didn't know anything about me. She wasn't like the people who had hurt her before. Okay, I finally sighed. That's not true. She looked at me with doubt. In a soft voice, she asked, "Why would they say that then?" Drew probably repeats it because he hears his father say it. They are close, so I can't blame him for listening to his dad. Ryan might be doing the same. I'm not really sure. She thought for a moment. Then why does Drew's father say it? Because Drew's father wants to believe any bad story about me. Now it feels like a game of telephone where the story gets more twisted with every retelling. She didn't respond, just looked uneasy. I could tell she felt overwhelmed. At 18, who could blame her? I had been dealing with this kind of problem for a long time and was tired of it. It wasn't her fault, but I didn't feel like explaining everything to her. I didn't owe her that. Madison, listen. I've taken everything you've said and trusted you, even though you could be pretending. I would appreciate it if you could trust me just the same. I never hurt my wife in any way, including emotionally. That story is not true. I know who started it and why, but we barely know each other, so I won't go into details. But if you feel uncomfortable, that's okay. We can call Carrie. Her house is small, but if I ask, I'm sure she'll let you stay in the stable for a few days until you can catch a bus. Later, while I watched the news, Madison walked into the room, and I turned off the TV. Does Carrie know this story? She asked. Yes, everyone's heard it. She didn't say anything to me. She doesn't believe it and doesn't share gossip. Madison looked at her hands. Finally, she said, "This morning I said I wanted to talk to you about something." I waited. It felt like a long pause, but finally she asked, "How soon do you want me to leave?" "If you want to go to Carrie's, we can call her now," I answered. She shook her head quickly. "No, I meant, how long can I stay here?" I was taken aback by her question. "I'm not rushing you, but I thought you might leave when you have enough money to get to Florida. Can I stay a little longer?" "Why?" "I really need a phone. I left mine behind because I knew Mom could track it. I need one, and that delays me." Even though I felt down, I smiled at the way she spoke. At 71, Doug kept one for emergencies. At 35, I liked having one. At 18, Madison felt she really needed one. I understood her need. I had been like that when I lived in Jersey, my phone always with me, checking for messages. But now in quiet rural Pennsylvania, I preferred talking on the phone when necessary, and I enjoyed hearing people's voices in person more than reading text on a screen. "Okay, that's fine." She muttered, "Thanks," and got up to leave. Before she could go, I asked, "What changed your mind?" She fidgeted and didn't quite meet my eyes. I'm not sure how to feel because I don't really know you, but you gave me a key, and when you had the chance, you didn't take advantage of me." She flushed and hesitated. I felt bad for misjudging you the other day and thought maybe I shouldn't be quick to judge. I felt something ease inside me. "Talk to Carrie tomorrow. If you think it's best to move there, just give me the key back." The next day, she came in after her shift. I wondered if she would hand me the key and leave to pack. Instead, she said, "I know how to make spaghetti. Do you want me to make dinner?" Avery's, "I hope I see you around," turned into catching me while I was loading firewood in the yard after dropping off Madison. She walked over. "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" I straightened. "I don't drink coffee in the evening." I noticed her expression dim a bit at what may have seemed like rejection. "But I go every morning around 10:30 if you want to join me tomorrow." "Go where?" "The Mason Jar." "I know that place. I'll meet you there at 10:30. She pointed to what I was doing. "I'll let you get back to your work and see you tomorrow." The next morning, she arrived right on time. She took off her coat and draped it on the back of her chair. Suddenly, I recognized her from before the sweater she wore reminded me of that day. She was the woman I had seen out of the corner of my eye as I left the mason jar that one time. Back then, I hadn't caught her face, so I didn't recognize her when we met at the stable. I felt a bit embarrassed, realizing that. On one hand, I had only seen her briefly, and I didn't think I needed to feel awkward about noticing her in that sweater. On the other hand, I felt a bit shallow thinking that saying, "Oh, I noticed her figure," was the best I could do if I wanted to acknowledge our earlier meeting. I chose to keep quiet and hoped I didn't blush. Right at that moment, she saw where my eyes went for a second, but she smiled directly into my eyes, which quickly returned to hers. "At least you're a gentleman, unlike many around here. Now maybe my comment that day in your driveway doesn't seem so arrogant," she said. "I don't understand. What are we talking about?" Her eyes widened for a moment, then she laughed. "Well done." She settled into her chair. "I don't mind if men find me attractive, and I don't mind a quick glance. I do mind a long stare. I really dislike loud comments. And unasked for proposals? They can keep those to themselves." "Not every guy, surely?" I asked. "I don't know about this town. I bet if I turned around suddenly right now, I'd see everyone trying to guess my size." I let her catch me looking around the room. "Not Richard, the owner. The guy in the corner booth isn't looking your way. The two teenagers to the right might be, though." I thought about the other men in the room and said, "So about 50 or 60%. That's enough for me to agree." "Thank you. I appreciate a gracious loser." She picked up her menu and leaned over it. Just as I took a sip of water, she said without looking up, "It's 32G if you're curious." I almost choked, but she didn't seem to notice, even though I could see her smile as she browsed the menu. I waited for her to take a sip of her drink. Interesting way to start a conversation, hinting about sizes. I laughed as she accidentally snorted water. It wasn't a bad morning. I was able to let go of my earlier annoyance about being judged. I shifted the focus away from myself and learned more about her. Jim Harvey is my uncle. When I finished vet school, I worked for a bit in upstate New York, but the practice didn't want any partners. I would have always just been an employee. So when Uncle Jim mentioned he was thinking about retirement and asked if I wanted to consider Pennsylvania. One coffee with Avery turned into coffee every few days. I can't claim it was my idea. After a year, habits are hard to break, and I was happy with my early chats with Linda if she wasn't busy, and reading my book if she was. But Avery would sometimes show up at my usual time and ask to join me. Talking with her broke the solitude as much as chatting with Linda did. We talked about people she had met in town. "What is he really like?" she would ask. I shared my insights while keeping any personal details out of our talks, letting her know about the unspoken truths that any small town has, which could trap an unsuspecting newcomer. He is Edna's niece's husband, so anything you say in the convenience store will reach him. Sometimes, she showed interest in what I was reading. I thought she was pretending because she had never read any of those books. Still, it was nice to chat about them. After 2 weeks, as we walked to our cars, she asked, "So, are you thinking of asking me out anytime soon?" I almost said I didn't think about asking women out very much. Ever since my wife, Anne, decided small-town life was boring and that city life was better, I had trouble dating. It took me some time to overcome the sadness of being left. When I finally felt ready to try dating again, it felt too late. Rumors about me had spread. When I told Madison I knew who started them, I wasn't lying. It was Anne, or more accurately her father, Carl, who probably spoke to her first. What woman would want to date a guy with a bad reputation? No one wants trouble in their life. I understood that. Stay away from those kinds of guys. But what bothered me was that people who had known me forever believed those rumors without asking me my side. Now I decided to get back in the dating scene. "This Friday?" I responded to her question. A dinner on Friday could lead to dinner again on Saturday and then to a fun night out listening to a band. The next week could be a nicer dinner at a fancier place, and I looked forward to seeing Avery in a beautiful dress. My earlier thoughts about other women faded as I focused on my date. I was careful not to rush things. I had always been uncertain if I understood a woman's signals correctly. Anne had to give me a clear hint before I realized she was interested. But it had been a long time since then. So I pushed aside my nerves. After a lovely dinner, I leaned in a bit, happy that she responded with a nice kiss, followed by a warmer and longer one. On our next date, while we were cuddled up on my couch, I gently moved my hand where I had wanted to for a while. She didn't mind, but I didn't ask her to stay over. I told myself it was because Madison was upstairs in her room. In truth, I was shy, and Avery had shown she was careful about men getting too close too fast. "It's a bit cold in here. Can you warm up the stove?" Avery asked as we returned from enjoying a new band at Largy's. "Where's Madison?" "Out with friends." I added a few pieces of kindling to the fire until the pleasant crackling sound filled the room, then placed larger logs on top. She got to choose the movie and picked When Harry Met Sally. That was fine by me. It's a decent movie. Beer? She asked, heading toward the kitchen. I'll grab them. When she returned, she looked relaxed, wearing a casual, oversized shirt. She sat on the couch beside me, handing me a beer before resting her head on my shoulder. This is one of my favorite parts, she said, pointing at the screen. Sally's so full of it. Of course, Ilsa wanted to be with Rick. As the scene played, she got up again. We need snacks. I'll grab some chips, she said, and disappeared into the kitchen. She returned quickly, still looking casual and comfortable. Once again, she settled next to me. We watched the movie in silence for a while, though I could tell she was enjoying it from the faint smile on her lips. I tried to focus on the story, but my mind wandered now and then. At one of the iconic scenes, she chuckled softly. This part always makes me laugh, she said, glancing at me with a teasing look. She seemed amused by my lack of focus on the screen. Another beer? She asked, already getting up. I nodded, and she disappeared into the kitchen, returning with another cold bottle. She handed it to me, her eyes sparkling with humor. You're really not paying attention to the movie, are you? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I shrugged sheepishly. Not really, I admitted. Well, you promised to watch it, she said lightly, shaking her head. With that, we both turned back to the screen, letting the movie fill the room with its light-hearted charm. The evening carried on with a warm and easy atmosphere, the fire crackling softly as the story unfolded. The movie ended and the room fell quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire. She leaned back on the couch with a playful smirk, her eyes catching mine. Now can I finally enjoy my movie? She teased. I chuckled nervously. Yeah, sure. She gave a soft laugh and stretched out, letting the relaxed atmosphere settle over us. As the credits rolled, she shifted slightly, her expression hinting at anticipation. I think it's your turn to make this night memorable, she said lightly, her voice warm but teasing. I leaned forward, focusing on her with gentle care. My actions were deliberate but unhurried, aiming to show her how much I valued this moment. Her breath quickened as I continued, responding to the connection growing between us. The quiet sounds of the room made everything feel more intimate, more personal. Time seemed to stretch and blur as we shared this closeness, a bond formed in silence and trust. She leaned back, her breathing steadying, and looked at me with a glowing smile. That was the perfect ending, she murmured, her tone soft and content. Later, as we lay side by side, she rested her head on my chest, the steady rhythm of her breathing comforting and grounding. She tilted her face toward mine and gave me a quick kiss before sitting up slightly. I like the right side of the bed, she said with a playful nudge. You'll have to scoot over. I froze for a moment, caught off guard by her words. It seemed like such a simple thing, but it stirred memories of a time before her, before us. I had always slept on the right side of the bed back when I was with Anne. I didn't respond immediately, but the warmth of her presence brought me back to the moment. All right, I said with a small smile, shifting over. She gave a satisfied hum and settled in, the room quiet except for the soft rustle of the blankets and the fading crackle of the fire. The night moved forward, filled with the promise of new beginnings and quiet understanding. There was a simple reason for my sleeping preference. I liked to sleep on my left side, which made it easier to get in and out of bed. That changed when Anne came along. I need my space when I sleep, Will, and I prefer to face away. Plus, I don't like seeing a wall so close to me, she explained. In our first apartment, the bed was pushed up against the wall on the left side. And the outlets are on the right side. I have more things to charge than you do, she added. And she was right. She had her phone, watch, iPad, headphones, Bluetooth speaker, laptop, and a portable charger. Anne really liked to keep all her devices powered up, so I moved to the left side. It wasn't a big issue even though I didn't sleep as well on my right side, and she didn't like me looking at her back when I lay on my left. It didn't matter that much. However, I ended up staying on that side for a few nights after she left. That was until I had a heated argument during a phone call. She told me she was leaving with a friend of mine. I didn't handle it well. Yeah? Well, I was with him once in our bed. What do you think about that? She shot back. I knew all about her preferences, and it struck me that I didn't want to sleep on that side anymore. She had changed things. I decided to take back the right side of the bed. The easygoing Will I used to be had turned into someone a bit more serious. So now I told Avery, I don't sleep on the left side. We can cuddle here if you want. This surprised her. I could see she was used to guys bending to her wishes, but she smiled and said, Well, I can't promise I won't elbow you while I sleep. I like my space. I tried to let those words go. We were a new couple figuring out how to relate to each other. I pulled her in close and enjoyed the feeling of being together. Every week, Madison gave me $25, which was what we agreed on. She had suggested 36 plus a quarter at first. You said an hour's pay, and I work 5 days a week. 5 times 7 and a quarter is, she explained, shaking the money in her hand. That's not for 5 full days. You work part-time, which comes to about $18, I replied. Honestly, I didn't mind the amount. I would have been fine without any payment at all. Originally, I suggested this when I was unsure about helping her out. It didn't cost me much to have her around, and I enjoyed her company, but I could see how important it was to her. So we settled on $25, which I saved in a separate account. 2 weeks later, she came to me with a bundle of money. I've never opened a bank account, but I don't want this just lying around. Is it easy? She asked. Yep, I replied. I took her to the bank. On their way, she chatted happily. I had a bank account with my birthday money and what I earned from babysitting. My mom opened it for me since I wasn't 18 yet. Last week, I had Drew take me to a branch of that bank, but they said my mom needed to fill out forms to make it mine. I can't make her do it until I turn 21. By then, she will probably have spent it all on shoes, she said sadly. What bank was that? I left her with the assistant manager. She didn't seem very sure of herself, but sometimes you have to learn to take care of things by yourself. I'll be over there, I said, pointing to the waiting area. I made a phone call. When she returned with some paperwork and a temporary ATM card, the smile on her face showed me that letting her handle it on her own was the right choice. So, I said as we got into the car, what the bank told you was true. She looked confused. The other bank had a rule called the age of termination, and in Oregon, that's 21. Until you reach that age, you can't make a custodian give up control of an account. But I held up a finger to stop her from frowning. You do have the right to see your online statements. It's against the law for the custodian to use the money for anything not meant for you. That means you can keep a close eye on things and speak up if she buys any shoes. I smiled back at her. Think of it as a 2.5-year savings plan that you didn't choose. I'll be out late, Madison said to me. Okay. Drew and I have been talking. Okay. She hesitated, expecting more from me. I found it funny that she thought I would interrupt her. I'm not your dad, and you're 18 now. So enjoy yourself and remember to turn off the lights when you get home. You don't mind? I mean, she struggled to find the right words. I mean that it's like Drew. I decided not to comment on that. Look, you're a smart woman. You'll make your own choices. And I'm the last person to give advice about relationships. I'm divorced, remember? Still, she paused, clearly trying to get her thoughts together. Why did you get divorced? Because my wife left me for one of my friends to go live in New York City, and for some reason I wasn't okay with that. My sarcasm didn't seem to bother her. She sat down in the chair across from me, looking for more information. Did she not understand boundaries? I certainly did, so I stood up and walked back to the den. Later, Avery joined me in the den, and we heard the kitchen door open. Because of how sound travels, anything said above a whisper in the kitchen was clear in the den. Drew probably thought he was being quiet, but we could hear him mumble. He's in there? I better go, I said, sharing a smile with Avery. Madison chimed in, her voice low. Just be polite and say hello. They stepped through the door, and I noticed both their surprised faces when they saw Avery. Madison already knew about us. We had already dealt with that awkward morning after, which the two women handled well while I just felt embarrassed. Since I had driven, Avery's car wasn't in sight. How's it going, Dr. Liacci? Everything okay? Drew asked, turning my attention to him. His question was meant for Avery, but he was looking at me, his expression serious. Yes, Drew, everything is fine, Avery replied, clearly understanding the undertone of his question. The moment stretched out uncomfortably for a second. If I were alone, I might have teased him with, "What's wrong, Drew?" But I wasn't alone. Avery was with me, and my thoughts had been elsewhere just minutes before. Why don't you two head to the living room? I suggested. You can talk there. What's with him? Avery asked as we closed my bedroom door. He's Patrick Mackey's son, I explained, handing her the whiskey I had been holding. And what does that matter? She asked. Patrick and I were in high school together along with Anne, my ex. He liked her and they dated for a bit. But I ended up with her. He married Drew's mother, but she got sick and passed away a few years later. Then one night he tried to connect with Anne again when I wasn't around. She said no, but it made his jealousy even worse. I took a sip of my drink and continued. When Anne and I started arguing about living together, he learned about it. He thought he'd get a second chance. Then Anne left for New York. He was furious and blamed me for her leaving. One night at a bar, he confronted me, drunk and angry. He told me that while I couldn't keep a woman, I shouldn't ruin things for someone who could. He tried to hit me, but others held him back, luckily for me. I smiled, trying to keep the mood light. After all, Anne had been with him first, so who really had trouble keeping a relationship? You couldn't handle a drunk? Avery asked, surprised. Have you seen Patrick? I replied, not waiting for her to answer. He's about 6'4" and weighs around 240 pounds, and it's all muscle. Even after all these years, he could probably take on anyone like a linebacker. Well, neither he nor Anne are here now, so why don't you think about what to do with those around you? One hand raised her glass to her lips for a sip, while the other hand started to unbutton her blouse. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. The sound of hammering broke the quiet morning. We tried to ignore it as Avery crossed the finish line, and I struggled to keep up. As we lay there in a little matted pile, the constant sound filled the room. It's hot in here, and it smells interesting, Avery said. I'm going to open a window. If that's Doug, you might give him a fright if you do that. My bedroom window looked right at his house. At least it helps keep older men awake, she chuckled. But he won't hear me over all that banging. She watched what my neighbor was doing. He's putting up signs for the election. The primaries are coming up soon, I replied. She continued to look outside. He must have a dozen signs along his yard, and they're all lined up in a neat way. Oh, look, another sign about an issue. He's one of those people who think they have all the answers about what's best for everyone. I think that might be a bit much, I said. Really? She pointed out the window as if to show me the evidence. Do you agree with those? I got up and walked over to see. Some of them yes, some no. But honestly, Doug cares more about others than a lot of people I know. Just because what he believes doesn't always match someone else's opinion doesn't change that. I leaned around her and opened the window a bit. Doug glanced up for a moment, making Avery step back, and then he returned to his work. Come back to bed, I asked. She did, and our lovely Saturday morning continued as she lay on her side, and I cuddled in close to her. One of her hands moved back to my neck, while we enjoyed our time together. No marks, she laughed when I started to get a little carried away. I settled for gently nibbling her ear instead. She continued to enjoy my affection until she reached her peak, and I followed soon after. Later, when I went to get Lucy for a walk, Doug waved a wooden sign at me. Can I put this in your yard? He was smiling, already knowing my answer. It was the same one I had given him every year like my father before me. Not a chance. All right. As Lucy bounded over to me, he turned to leave, then looked back with a wink. She seems like a very healthy woman. I laughed and nodded, debating whether to tell her. I wasn't sure if she would feel embarrassed and happy, or embarrassed and annoyed by the two guys who appreciated what she had shown. Chapter 3. When I met her later that week after dropping off Madison, the greeting was much colder. I thought you said you and Anne disagreed about living in Sailorton. I figured she must have heard the rumors. No. I said we didn't agree on living here, but I don't think I used the word just. We also didn't agree on her being close with one of my friends. I didn't expect sympathy, and I didn't get it. Her expression remained hard. Anything else? Everything else came from that, so no, nothing else. Her stiff jaw and the way she tilted her head made it clear she believed I was wrong. She waited for me to say more. I could see that my silence upset her. She probably thought I was refusing to admit I was at fault. Nothing to say? She asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Did she think I would beg and promise to change? She didn't know me well. She had already made up her mind about me. So how bad were the bruises? I asked. The sudden question took her by surprise. She looked confused. What do you mean? You know, the bruises in the photos the police took. I've never seen them. How bad were they? Or did you only speak to people who saw the black eyes and other marks? Maybe as a vet you got to look at the hospital reports. Her confusion remained, now mixed with a hint of judgment. Her jaw clenched tighter. She was ready to share her thoughts. I haven't seen any proof that you think that, I interrupted, then turned and walked away. Carrie noticed me leaving. My expression showed my mood clearly. Will? Patrick or Drew talked to Avery. She accepted it. Carrie's concern turned to something softer. I'm sorry. Madison stood in the office doorway, looking worried. See you later, I said as I passed by. And just so you know, Avery may be your friend, but she's not welcome in my home. I ignored her surprised look and headed home. Later, as Madison helped me set the table for dinner, she brought it up. Carrie told me what happened. I waited for her to say something more. I expected her to apologize or ask how I was doing, but she just focused on the silverware. Was she finally respecting my space? She could have at least mentioned that it was too bad I was going back to a lonely bed. I laughed silently at my own double standards. You should finish high school, I said one morning while we were having breakfast. Madison stopped moving. Or you could go to trade school if you want to be an electrician or something. But working minimum wage jobs forever is not a great idea. I'm not going back to Oregon, she said firmly. Finish school here. Finally, in a quiet voice, she asked, I could stay? You can stay as long as you want. I enjoy having you here. That made her cheeks turn red. She thought for a moment, then shook her head. Transferring my credits from West Kincaid would mean the people back home knowing where I am. I don't think that's true. You're 18, and I think you could handle the transfer yourself. But if you're worried, you could get a GED. It might take a lot of study, but you always have an answer. Yes, I'm older and wiser. You're a nerd. That's true. She thought for a while longer, then shook her head again. Carrie's going to offer me a full-time job and... She hesitated, then shook her head again. No, I need to get my life together first, then I'll figure things out. But thank you for letting me stay. I shrugged. And thank you for reminding me how old I am with the way you say like all the time. I ignored her playful gesture. And congratulations on Bothwell. I got up and put my dishes in the sink. Think about what I said. Minimum wage isn't enough. My life is fine as it is. I decided to drop it for now. She's back. Carrie's serious tone hinted at who she meant. I was dropping Madison off when Carrie pulled me aside. Anne? She nodded. It seems everything isn't as great as it seems, not even in New York. What do you mean? It's all hearsay, but friends of friends say that he wasn't as wonderful as he appeared. He took what he wanted from her, and once he had enough, he looked for someone else. When she made a fuss, he just left. For a moment, Carrie seemed lost in thought. I was curious about her past, the 2 years she had away while her cousin managed the small business, the dates with different guys in the area, but I knew she wouldn't share that with me. Carrie valued her privacy. She returned to the present. Then she realized that living there is much more expensive than here. Rent, food, insurance, and other day-to-day costs are a shock. When your job experience is mostly in small-town stores, it's hard to find high-paying jobs in New York. So, going home seemed like a good choice, even if it meant facing her parents. I guess gossip will be all over town, I sighed. She looked at me with understanding. Probably. But you know what, Will? Your real friends, the ones who see the truth, they are all very proud of you. I feel like a grumpy old man. That's accurate. You should work on that. You've always held yourself with respect. I'm glad to have you as my friend. Hearing this from someone I admire made me feel better about the bad news we got. We noticed Avery coming out of a stall further down. She looked at us for a moment, then turned away. She's not like her uncle, Carrie said. Jim Harvey used to say, listen, think, ask, then speak. I nodded. I had heard him say it before. At first it seemed odd to me, but it made more sense as I grew older. Then the doorbell rang. Looking out, I saw someone I didn't want to see. If you're looking for Cheaters Anonymous, it meets at the Ramada on Thursdays, I greeted her with a sarcastic tone. It seemed to catch her off guard, and she didn't reply. What do you want, Anne? I came to check if those boxes of clothes are still in the basement. Goodwill, isn't that funny? Bad Will gave them to Goodwill. Bye. I started to close the door. Will, please. I opened the door wider. What? Can we talk for a moment? After a moment of thinking, I let her in but didn't offer her anything. She looked down at her feet for a second, her fingers moving nervously. That always showed me she was anxious. So? I asked. I didn't come for the clothes. I was pretty sure nothing of mine was left here. After 6 years of marriage, I guess you know a bit about me. She nodded slightly. I came because I've been hearing things around town. At first, I didn't understand when people were sympathetic to me, but then it hit me. I was shocked. It's what happens when people think you have an abusive husband. I never said that, Anne insisted. I gave her a look to show I didn't believe her. If you didn't say it, you hinted at it, and you never said it wasn't true. She was quiet. Anne always went silent when she didn't want to admit she was wrong. I waited for her to say something. If she wanted to talk, that was fine, but I wasn't going to ignore what was wrong. She finally spoke. I'm really sorry, Will. I wasn't thinking clearly. If I didn't know how easily she could cry, I might have believed her. I was stressed, and my parents were upset. My mom was yelling at me. My dad was being distant. I was afraid they wouldn't talk to me again. So when he asked if there was a reason I wanted to leave town, I just said I needed to get away from you, and he jumped to conclusions. She looked very unhappy. I'm sorry. It was wrong to do. I thought that no one would take it seriously except my family. I thought people would laugh it off and say no way Will would do that. People love gossip, and your dad knows many people here. I stood up. It's time for you to go, Anne. I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm really sorry. Okay, it's time for you to go. I just want to say, please leave. She looked shocked. Then she walked toward the door and paused to look back. Is it true that we can't go back, Will? I stared at her in disbelief. That answer was clear enough. She nodded, opened the door, and then hesitated once more. I wasn't honest about being with him in our bed. I wanted to hurt you. The only time we were together before I left was once at the Motel 6. Just once? Great. I'll add that to the list of things you've cost me. She nodded nervously and stepped out. I found Madison in the kitchen when I went to grab a drink. She seemed unable to look me in the eye. She must have overheard everything. Whatever. I went back to the office to focus on some work. Before I reached the door, she called out, Will? I turned around. I'm sorry I questioned you. I should have trusted you more considering how you've treated me. I shrugged. I felt so bitter at that moment. You don't know me well. I grew up here and everyone doubted me, so don't be too hard on yourself. Maybe, but I know what it feels like to not be believed. I guess I'm not better than my mom. That made me stop. I turned back again. No, I'm just someone you know, and not very well at that. She was supposed to look after you but didn't even try. You're not like her. To be honest, you had two parents who didn't understand what it meant to be a parent. I turned and went to the den to watch an episode of Married with Children, one of my dad's favorites. I wasn't in the mood for work, but just watching a show didn't satisfy me. I played some Pearl Jam, switched to Nirvana, and got lost in my book. After a while, I heard Madison say, I'm going to take Lucy for a walk. I felt a bit bad. I knew Madison wasn't a fan of grunge, but this was my house, and my calm life had just been shaken up by a difficult ex, so I didn't feel too guilty. I put up with her music when she showered. The next morning, I was surprised to see Doug coming over as I went out to get some wood. For some time now, he said, greeting me, I haven't known whether to trust my instincts or what I hear. What do you mean? Madison talked to me a bit when she came by for Lucy yesterday. Oh. You might not know this, but the Whites are distant relatives of my late wife. I didn't know that. Anne had never mentioned it. In a place with so many old families, it made sense that everyone was somehow connected. Doug nodded. Yep. So while my gut said one thing, the family talk said another. It made me cautious. I hope I didn't come off as rude to you. I tried to stay neutral. You weren't rude, Doug. Just a bit distant. He nodded again. No hard feelings? You didn't know, and family is family. So no hard feelings. He smiled. Probably the warmest smile he had given me in over a year. I called Carl and told him the story he had been told wasn't true. What did he say? He told me to go away. He chuckled. Carl takes a while to change his mind, but he gets there eventually. Anne is in for a tough talk with her dad soon. Tell me what really happened, Madison asked me over dinner 2 days later. Huh? With your ex-wife. She isn't my wife anymore. I have a paper to prove it. She rolled her eyes. With your ex, then. No, it's not your business, and it brings up things I'd rather forget. People are saying all kinds of things, and I don't know what to tell them. Say nothing. I know for sure you didn't treat her badly. So what was the real reason she left? I frowned and shook my head. She frowned back. Guess what? Anne and I lived in New Jersey after we got married. Her dream was to have an apartment in Manhattan, and I said okay. I didn't really want to live in the city, but I thought I could manage it for a year or two. Compromise, you know? Then my dad got sick. My mom had passed away years before. We moved back here to look after him, thinking it would only be for a couple of months at most. It ended up being more than a year. She said a few things about the situation, but even she knew that suggesting we leave him was too much. Then he passed away. I paused and took a sip of my beer. That's when things started to change. I didn't want to sell this house. I'm the 4th generation to live here. Wow, Madison said. That's a long time. The longest I've lived anywhere was about 5 years. Yeah, it's important to me, and I'd like to raise kids here someday. So why not keep it? Because selling it was the only way we could get the money to buy a place in New York. Suddenly, renting an apartment in Manhattan turned into buying a condo in the East Village. She painted a picture of having lunch in nice little places with artsy friends. She told me I'd enjoy going to trendy bars where we could try different drinks. Not that either of us really knew anyone in New York. I had no idea how we'd afford that. Anne hadn't worked in a year, and just on my salary, the mortgage and taxes would have been too much. I guess I should have focused on that instead of getting angry. But I didn't. Instead, I stood my ground a bit harder than I might have needed to. I told her no way were we spending over $1 million just to get a one-bedroom place so she could have lunch in cute spots. I said flat-out no to selling this house. I said another no to moving back to New Jersey if the goal was saving to buy in New York. We could save a lot faster here. That, apparently, my voice dripped with sarcasm, was a huge issue. She had already managed to move away from Sailorton once. and now the idea of going back felt overwhelming. I couldn't help but find a bit of dark humor in that thought. But it never happened. That surprised Madison. Nope, a month later she just left, and you know she made up a story to make herself look better. I glanced at her. She was fully focused on what I was saying. And now I've tried to meet you halfway, so give me some space. There's more to it, she replied. Go away, Madison. I need some time alone. I headed to my room and closed the door firmly. Hey, Madison, I called out. She poked her head in. I want you to see something I found. I turned my computer screen so she could look at it. It was a page from the Oregon State Police about missing people. I pointed to a picture of a girl with dark brown hair, pale skin, and a few freckles on her nose. Below the photo were her name, age, height, weight, last seen date, and contact details for the West Kincaid Police Department. Does she look familiar? Madison stared at the screen without saying a word. The truth is, while I know you might not care much about Dave or your mom, there are friends and family who might be really worried. I called my best friend from my dad's before I left Boston to tell her I was okay. But I bet you asked her to keep it quiet, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. Her face showed determination. I'm not going back. No one is saying you should. But maybe you could let others know you're all right. You want me to call them? I shrugged, and she shook her head. Then I'll just get flooded with calls from everyone. Have you heard of blocking your number? No, she interrupted my joke. I really don't want to deal with the you need to come home conversation. I have enough on my plate without that stress. I'm not ready to talk to anyone yet. Sounds like someone isn't quite ready to be on their own. I added a bit of challenge to my tone. People care about you, you know. I don't know what your life was like before, but I can tell there are people who would want to hear from you. She avoided my gaze. When she finally looked at me, I noticed her eyes were a bit glossy. Will, I'm scared that if I start arguing with them, everything will fall apart just when things are starting to get better. Her voice was filled with worry. Then just send a video message from a temporary email and delete it right after. You really have a solution for everything, don't you? What can I say? I'm pretty good at finding ways around things. You're such a nerd. She said it with a slight smile, showing she found some comfort in my words despite her feelings. I could see her thinking hard. Can I say whatever I want? It's your video. If I do this, I don't want to seem like a silly girl who just ran away because my parents wouldn't buy me a new phone. I shrugged. 10 minutes later, she showed me the first version. It's your choice, I said, but I think you might get in trouble for saying his name and calling him a bad person. She looked stubborn. Madison, do you need more issues right now? Legal ones? After a moment, I could see her understanding. About 30 minutes later, after some starts and stops in her speech, she came back. The friendly woman with dark brown hair looked at the camera, neither smiling nor frowning. The wall behind her was a plain beige color with a lighter patch where a picture used to hang in the hallway. This is for the police who are looking for Madison Dwyer from 218 Forest Glen Drive in West Kincaid. I didn't know you were searching until a friend showed me your missing persons page. Thank you for your concern, and I'm sorry for any trouble this has caused you. I just want you to know that I'm safe and not in a bad situation. The video showed her moving to the front door, taking a key from her pocket and unlocking it. I'm not stuck in a room somewhere or dealing with drugs. I left because I was 17 and didn't want to be with someone much older than me. Now I'm 18. I'm an adult. I'm fine and not coming back. Before I could think further, she hit send. It's going to the police. Some high school friends, my mom and my aunt, so that my family knows in case mom pretends she didn't see it. Well, that will cause some chatter, I noted. I hope so. The age of consent here is 18. I checked. She met my gaze. Forget him. I'm Tammy Strickland, Madison's mother. Those words, spoken by the woman who just knocked on my door, were not what I expected that day. What are you doing here? Her words came from behind me. I turned to see the unfriendly young woman. I have come for you, Maddie. How did you find me? I hired an agency that traced an address from your email and then tracked it from what they saw in your video. Madison looked at me with blame. I had suggested she reach out to home. Hey, I said. I should have thought about IP addresses, but I wasn't the one who filmed my street or hit send without thinking. She grimaced, recognizing the truth in that. I'll be in the den, I said firmly. You two can use the living room. 10 seconds later, Madison peeked into the den. We're going to be in the kitchen, not the living room. Please stay here, she said. When I looked at her, she gave a slight smile. She knew how sounds traveled from the kitchen to the living room. You'll see, she added with a hint of mystery. I've come to take you home, Tammy announced, without asking how I was or showing any warmth. I'm not going with you. Maddie, you are. I know you think you're an adult, Tammy continued, ignoring my quiet reply. I am. But you haven't even finished high school yet. You're not ready for the real world. Just look at how you didn't graduate this year. That says enough. I'm not going with you. This isn't your home. Will is fine with me staying here. Maddie, there's only one reason an older man keeps a young woman around, and it's not a good reason. A 51-year-old man? Will doesn't look 51 to me. He seems more like he's in his mid-30s, and that is a big difference for you right now. I had to hold back a laugh. I didn't know much about Madison's stepfather, Dave, but I was sure he was indeed 51 years old. Maybe he is. I could hear a hint of my amusement in Madison's voice. I wondered if Tammy noticed. But whatever Will's age is, he has been a better adult role model than my parents or my stepfather ever were. Oh, sweetie, I know it can seem that way. I was 18 once, too, and an older person can look really impressive. But you need to trust me, trust us. We're trying to do what's best for you. What exactly are you doing? I'm taking you home. If Mr. Danrither causes any issues, Dave has already talked to a lawyer. He informed them about the situation with a young girl staying with an older man. Based on what I learned when I got here, I contacted the lawyer to mention that I had information about your safety being at risk. A heavy silence fell as Madison took this in. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. I'm disappointed that you'd lie about a good man simply because you are upset that he took the place of my mother. I couldn't tell what shocked Tammy more, Madison's words, the cold way she said them, or the harsh judgment in her voice. I would respond, but I won't bring myself down to your level. Just so you know, Will worked hard to keep things appropriate. He kept me out of his personal space, not the other way around. So there, Mom. The way she said that last word revealed her deep anger. Tammy made a mistake by involving her husband. Dear, Dave is willing to let this go. You misunderstood how much he wanted to be a father to you and to discuss your friendships with the boys at school. You reacted strongly. We'll put this... I could hear how surprised Madison was in her voice. Oh my God, you are actually blaming this on me. Her voice carried a sharp edge. I will never return to that man, and I will never go back to a mother who doesn't believe her own daughter when something terrible happens. Just leave. When her mother tried to argue, Madison's anger erupted, and her voice rose even louder. Get out, and tell your lawyer that when Will takes action against you for lying, I will say you made it all up. Maddie! Her mother's voice was desperate. Get out! It was time for me to step in. As Tammy started to argue again, I walked into the room. Miss Strickland, it's time for you to leave. You! This is none of your... I interrupted her by moving close. Now! She stepped back, clearly intimidated by someone taller and stronger than she was. Don't you dare touch me! She yelled. Then she reached out and grabbed Madison's arm. Maddie, come on, we need to go! I wouldn't think of touching you, I replied. I took out my phone and called for help. Madison stood her ground, and we both held our positions while I made the call. Hello, this is Will Danrither at 83 Pine Street. Could you send a patrol car? I have someone here who refuses to leave. Tammy's eyes widened. No, we're not in danger. We know the person, and she's not a real threat. After I ended the call, I nodded at Madison. It'll be about 5 or 10 minutes. The police will want to talk to you alone. I'll be in the den. When I noticed she looked unsure, I added, It's okay. This is what they need to do when someone might be feeling pressured. I turned to her mother, who just stayed silent while I gave her a cold smile. If you're still here when they arrive, I will call the police for trespassing. And if you pull on her arm any harder, I glanced at Tammy, still tugging at Madison. I'll happily support charges if Madison wants to press them. I was certain Tammy saw the patrol car pass as it drove down Pine Street. She kept insisting almost to the very end, becoming more irritated as Madison counted down the minutes. You didn't tell me they came to talk to you earlier, Madison said once they had left. I was right. They had wanted to speak with her alone. I noticed she looked a bit shaken. Talking to the police can be stressful for a teenager. As she would say, things just got serious. I told them you had a key, friends you were out with, and that you weren't home because you had been working at Bothwell for a while. I showed them your birth certificate, sorry for looking into your things to prove you were 18. They said they would check in with you tomorrow morning just to be sure. I smiled. My mention of Bothwell helped calm them down. Everyone in this town would laugh at the thought that Carrie Schaefer couldn't. A, see that a young woman who worked for her needed help, and B, give that help, even if it meant confronting someone. Some of her workers are really tough, and they would do anything for her. She stared at me, and I couldn't tell what she was thinking. Finally, she turned to leave, but then stopped and came back. Is the offer to help me with my GED still good? She asked. Being against what her parents thought was a strong reason for a teenager to want help. So I had a rough encounter. It wasn't too bad, but I didn't like it. Danny boy. I recognized that voice without turning. It was Patrick Mackey. I was outside the Sunoco station putting air in a tire. I looked up at his tall figure. "You know Anne's back," he said. "Yep." "She didn't come back to you, though." "Nope." He smiled. "Didn't think so, after what you did." "Yeah, I know she said maybe we misunderstood a bit." I noted the words maybe and a bit and wondered how I ever liked her. "I think she's just too kind to keep reminding you of your mistakes now that you're down. She knows we all see how you messed up." "You know what, Patrick? I don't care what you think. If you want Anne, go for it. I stopped caring a while ago, around the time she started seeing Gordy." "Even that guy is better than you, huh?" "Anne and I have been out once, but she tells me she needs some time before she thinks about being serious again. I can handle that. But you know what, Danny boy? You can't seem to keep women." I wasn't sure what he meant and didn't care. "Well, Patrick, I guess there's nothing more to say. Have a nice day, preferably somewhere else." But he wasn't finished. "You've got a new woman living with you now. I hear she's quite young. Some girl you picked up off the street, I hear." That made me mad. "No, I wouldn't call her that." I let my anger show a little too much. I was upset because Anne had let me down, along with Gordy. His large hand grabbed my jacket and pulled me to my feet before I could react. His huge fist hit my stomach. "Don't talk about Anne White that way," he hissed. I managed to hit him in the side. I knew it would hurt him, even if I wasn't a big football player. But he shook it off and hit me again. Patrick Mackey was big and strong. I found myself in a tough spot. He was holding me up as I struggled to keep from getting sick from the hits to my stomach. I was really in trouble. "Patrick!" A loud voice came from about 20 feet away. "I've called the police." He let go of me, making me bend over and turn to see Edna, the gas station owner, holding her phone. "I saw everything, including you hitting Will when he couldn't defend himself." Edna and Patrick had a stare down, and Edna won. Patrick was a jerk, but he wasn't a bully. He hated the idea that he had acted unfairly. He shot a glare at her, then at me, and angrily walked over to his truck. "You okay, Will?" she asked as her eyes followed Patrick. "I'll be fine in a minute," I replied. The police arrived, checked on me, and listened to Edna's account. They nodded, familiar with the town's problems and not surprised at what had happened. One officer, Matt, came over to me. He and I had gone to high school together. "Do you want to press charges? Edna would rather not have to testify since we're locals," he said. "No, but I'd appreciate it if you could remind him that there shouldn't be a next time." He nodded. "Absolutely. I'll take care of it." He looked down for a moment and then met my gaze. "I heard from Old Man White that maybe Anne's story isn't as strong as we thought." I was taken aback. It had been weeks since Anne's father had seemed set in his beliefs, and I hadn't expected him to change his mind. "I'm sorry I doubted her. We need to take women's claims seriously because, unfortunately, many face real harm. But I'm sorry." Matt was a good guy, not someone who would unfairly target me just to teach a lesson. I understood his perspective, as it's true that women often face violence from their partners. "Don't worry about it. Just tell Patrick that if he tries something again, it will be his problem, not mine." My stomach hurt, and so did my heart. Why did I feel like the town was against me? Some people were starting to change their minds, but not everyone. After the police left, Edna checked on me again. "You doing all right?" she asked. I nodded. "I don't believe in hurting people," she said, clearly hinting at something. I understood her message. "But sometimes there's a reason for concern?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She just saved me from a tough situation. She shrugged. "I don't know about that." The thought of having a whiskey to help calm my nerves sounded appealing. Not just any whiskey, but some of the nice stuff my dad had left behind. I poured one drink, then another, both generous servings. By the time I thought about pouring a third, I realized I should switch to something cheaper. After all, I didn't need to be wasting such expensive whiskey. I was pouring a drink when Madison walked in. She pretended to recoil, waving her hand like trying to clear the air. "Don't light any matches in here." "Forget everyone." The smile left her face. "What's wrong, Will?" "Nothing." I put the bottle away and started to head back to my chair, and she followed. As I turned to sit, a sharp pain hit my stomach, and I let out a surprised breath. She was right there. "What happened?" "I got hurt," I said. "Let me see." She wouldn't take no for an answer. I unbuttoned my shirt and she gasped. Looking down, I saw the bruises starting to form. They would become more colorful in the coming days. She made me tell her what happened. When I mentioned Patrick's name, her expression stiffened. "Hey, speaking of the Mackeys," I asked, "why aren't you with Drew tonight?" I didn't say it very clearly since I had been drinking. "How can you ask that?" "I thought you two were together. It's Saturday." I tried to sound kind. I really didn't want to include Drew with his father, Just because Patrick was difficult didn't mean I had to be too. Not being supportive of Madison's boyfriend would definitely make me difficult, so I worked hard to be fair. But if he makes you happy, my problems with his dad don't matter. She studied me for what felt like a long time. The glasses she finally admitted she needed added a serious look to her youthful face. Well, the truth is, I'm not with him anymore. I looked at her, surprised. I was willing to give him a chance at first because of what you said. You know, he was listening to his dad. But then when Avery said a few things and he agreed, what? I was still okay because I wasn't sure either. But after I told him what I heard Anne say, he was all, "You don't know what you're talking about." So I broke up with him. Oh, sorry about that. She shrugged and sat back in the chair. She stared at the TV. Why do you watch this stuff? I don't know. If I stop judging and just watch, it's kind of funny. The jokes are really silly. Yeah, that's what makes them funny. Then the alcohol made me speak honestly. And they remind me of when this was my town. She didn't reply. She wrapped a blanket around her feet. When the show ended, she watched as my empty glass moved from the table to my mouth and back. Can I have one of those? We hadn't really talked about drinking rules. Why? Because I'd like a little drink, and I don't mind the taste of whiskey. Okay. I started to stand up, but thought better of it when my stomach protested. Pour me another, please. Later, I lost track of time and felt myself being guided somewhere. I can stay here, I said, feeling a bit confused. I often sleep down here. Shh. Maybe one more drink. I was in that tricky spot, tipsy enough to think another drink would be nice, but not so much that I felt sick. Shh. I was gently urged until I drank some water and had a brief talk about taking aspirin. I wasn't much help. The bed felt warm, a place I hadn't used much in the past year except for when Avery was around. I had gotten used to dozing off in my chair while watching something light. I snuggled into the comfort of the bed and let darkness take over. I woke up to someone looking at me from the other side of the bed. It was a strange feeling because it didn't seem right. The dark brown eyes were familiar, but the hair was a rich brown instead of the warm light shade I expected. There were freckles, too, which surprised me. Good morning, Madison said with a smile. I replied. Feeling a bit panicked, I checked myself. I was shirtless but felt fabric below. At least I had on some shorts. I noticed the neck of her blue shirt peeking out from under the covers. You should brush your teeth, she said. Please. She scrunched her nose. I got out from under the covers, sneaking a look back at her as I left the room. She smiled knowingly, like she could see right through me. On autopilot, I brushed my teeth, used the restroom, and washed my face. Then I returned to the bed. She lifted the covers. Come on. Finally, I managed to ask, what's going on? Will, I've been here since I helped you to bed last night. Come on. You're letting the cold air in. She shook the covers. Feeling a little chilly, I slid back under the covers, careful to keep some space between us. What's happening? I asked again. Last night, I thought about the kind of guy I want to be with. I decided I wanted to sleep beside him. But then he got too drunk, and that messed up my plans. What happened? I could remember some of the previous evening, but I didn't recall her getting into bed with me, so I must have missed something. You passed out quickly. You kind of cuddled with me and said it was warm and that my hair smelled nice. You did end up holding me. Oh no, Madison. Shh. I didn't mind. The only problem was that I felt attracted to you, but nothing was happening. So we didn't? She shook her head. Last night you seemed a bit ready for something, but it didn't feel right since you weren't sober. She paused for a moment. Now, you're sober. We exchanged a long look filled with unspoken words. The room was quiet as she shifted under the covers, her movements deliberate. She adjusted her position and gave me a small, hesitant smile. Her expression softened, and for a moment there was a glimpse of vulnerability in her eyes, belying the confident front she had shown earlier. I want this, she said softly, her voice steady but gentle. I hesitated, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She reached out, her hand lightly brushing against my arm. Her touch was warm and tentative, yet reassuring in its intent. Her hand moved slowly, tracing along my shoulder and down to my chest, her touch careful and deliberate. She looked at me, waiting for a sign of acknowledgement, her gaze searching mine. I took a deep breath, realizing the weight of the moment. My mind wandered briefly, reflecting on the complexities of our situation and the assumptions others might make. Yet, in that quiet, still moment, what mattered most was the shared understanding between us. I placed a hand gently on her hip, meeting her gaze. Slowly, I leaned in, and our lips met in a soft kiss. It wasn't rushed or urgent, but filled with unspoken words and emotions. In the quiet of the room, we shared a connection that needed no further explanation, letting the moment speak for itself. The warmth between us lingered as the night continued, wrapped in the quiet comfort of mutual understanding and trust. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, her touch gentle and reassuring. She smiled softly as I took her wrist, guiding it toward me. "Put your arms around me," I said quietly. I leaned closer, letting my actions speak more than words. My hand rested along her side, moving in a slow and soothing pattern that made her shiver slightly. Our shared connection grew as I kissed her lightly, letting the warmth between us deepen. Her breathing grew heavier, and I shifted my attention to the soft curve of her shoulder, brushing my lips gently along her skin. She tightened her hold on me, her fingers brushing against the back of my neck. I paused, looking into her eyes to make sure we were both fully in the moment. There was trust there, an unspoken understanding that made everything feel right. We stayed close, letting the quiet intimacy of the moment speak louder than any words could. Carefully, I adjusted my position, ensuring she was comfortable as we continued to share this quiet closeness. Each movement was gentle and deliberate, meant to reassure rather than overwhelm. The room seemed to shrink around us, leaving only the soft glow of understanding and mutual care. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but soft. "I'm ready," she said, her words full of trust and warmth. I nodded, smiling softly, and placed a hand gently on her cheek. "We'll take this one step at a time," I assured her. The rest of the night passed in quiet connection, with no need for words to fill the space between us. The moments were simple yet profound, and we let them unfold naturally, savoring the shared understanding that grew stronger with each passing second. "You're such a nerd," she said, smiling as she relaxed comfortably on the couch. I focused on what I was doing, enjoying the moment and slowly building up her excitement. I could tell she was waiting for me to ask her for something in return, but instead, I shifted to gentle kisses. I watched for the small signs that she wanted more. I became more focused, discovering what made her happiest. I continued to explore gently until I noticed her breathing change. I kept going, even when she started to move more. As she experienced pleasure, I stayed close and attentive, ensuring she felt good. When her hands relaxed, she looked at me, her expression bright and full of joy. "Oh my God, that was amazing," she said, shaking her head slightly in disbelief. There was a spark in my eyes showing how much I enjoyed the moment too. "Can we have a little break and then be close again?" she asked, her voice a bit husky. She encouraged me to lie back and joined me, her touch gentle but eager. Even though I felt some nervousness, seeing her look at me with such intensity made me forget everything else. It was a warm, beautiful experience, and I wanted to hold on to it for as long as I could. "Am I too heavy?" she asked after a moment. "No, not at all." "Okay," she replied, leaning down to kiss me again. "I want to keep going so we can both enjoy this." Her smile made me nod in agreement. We took our time, kissing and enjoying each other's company until she turned the tables and made sure we both had our moment of delight. Later, as we lay together, she murmured, "That was different." "In what way?" I asked. "Well, I've never spent an entire night with a guy before. This was a first for me." "But we didn't do much during the night," I replied with a smile. "Well," she said with a teasing tone, "that could change." She snuggled in closer, wrapping my arms around her. "Can I share something a bit awkward?" she asked. "Sure," I replied, curious. "I once mentioned that I was on the pill. That was true, but I was also seeing someone," she explained. "However, we never shared an intimate moment like the one we did." I felt a bit uneasy talking about personal matters, but I was glad we were not face to face. "I didn't know." "It's okay," she assured me. "What we just experienced was really special. That's not the difficult part." She shifted to get comfortable. "And also," she paused for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice seemed a bit forced, like she was trying to downplay it. "Drew sort of went through the motions, but I could tell it was just because he felt he needed to because I did it for him. He didn't really know what he was doing." I understood what she was saying then. She had been intimate with Drew. A small spark of jealousy flared up in me, but I pushed it down. "We all have our pasts." She paused, probably waiting to see how I would react. I stayed quiet. "But he isn't the difficult part, just a side note." She took a deep breath. "The hard part is an older guy I had to be with, because—" She stopped, shaking her head slightly as if she didn't want to go there. She felt my arms tense and held them tighter. Another long pause. I was unsure how to respond. It pained me to see her like this, but I wasn't good in these situations. Should I ask so she knows she can talk? Or should I not ask because it's her private life? I thought about what I would want and decided that was a good guide. I said softly, "I'm sorry. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. And if that time never comes, that's okay too." She shifted slightly and drew closer, as if trying to connect even more. That guy knew what he was doing, but for him it was just to prepare me because I wasn't feeling anything. I wondered if that's how it is for men, an obligation or just a step towards something else. What she said before made more sense now. Until you. She turned to kiss my arm. Thank you. I felt a tear on my arm and realized she was crying. Armor. Will. Our handshake and smiles were genuine. Armor was a cousin of sorts. He owned the local Ford dealership. I'm bringing a good friend around tomorrow. She needs something inexpensive but dependable. I'd appreciate it if you could treat her kindly, like family, without making a big deal out of it. You hoping to get her a deal? Armor did that for close family. The rest of us got fair treatment. Whether it was a fancy Mustang or an old car for someone who just got their license, Armor was always reasonable with us, and we showed him loyalty. He had offered me a special deal when I bought a truck after a tough time in my life, his way of supporting me when things got difficult. I had declined, just as I would now. Nope, just treat her like I was treated when I bought that first truck. He smiled at the memory. That worked out well for you. Benji bought it when you traded it in, he mentioned, referring to another cousin. Madison felt nervous the next day. It was clear that Madison's life as a suburban girl did not involve much responsibility. The skills she needed to learn after leaving home were very different from those she had known. You can be open with Armor about your budget, I said. He won't take advantage of you or try to sell you something too expensive. Mark will show you our used cars, Armor said, handing her off to a younger man. We'll talk later when you find something you like. I sat in the corner of the showroom, engrossed in a book while watching her take several test drives. I could see her nerves fading as she realized she was actually buying a car. After a few hours, a smiling Madison pulled her bright red Escape into my driveway and got out. Her name's Kendall, she said proudly. Later that day, after she returned from Bothwell, she peeked into my room. Let's go get pizza. I'm busy. Stop working and let's go get pizza. I'll drive. I laughed at her obvious excitement. I grabbed my coat and got into the passenger seat. On our way home, she decided to take a detour by the lake. She pulled into a dirt path along the shore and said, "Let's celebrate Kendall." What do you mean? My mind caught up as she unbuckled her seatbelt and turned toward me. She maneuvered around the center console and leaned to hit a button. As the seat adjusted, she said, "It has power seats." It had been many years since I had shared a close moment like this in a car, and it was both thrilling and a bit awkward. We chuckled at the funny positions we found ourselves in, even as she bumped her head on the roof. The laughter faded, and soon I found myself close to her, staring into her eyes as they slowly closed. Her forehead rested against mine, and I could see her catch her breath softly. I pulled back slightly and then leaned in to share a gentle kiss. The warmth of the moment enveloped us, feeling special and intense as I held her close. "You're great for each other right now," someone said behind me one day in the grocery store. Madison was exploring the produce section while I waited in line at the deli counter. I turned, surprised to see Carrie. I wasn't sure what to say. I thought our relationship, besides the fact that Madison lived in my house, was something private. Carrie understood my expression perfectly. She told me. "You know I won't say anything," she promised. "But I think it might eventually get out. It's tough to keep a secret in a small town." "I'm not hiding anything. I just don't think it's anyone else's concern." She laughed softly. "You're right, but you know how some people in the stable love to pry." We watched Madison gather a huge pile of fresh greens. "Why do you think we're good for each other?" She needed to see that there are nice people out there. Drew Mackey's okay, but not really a great guy if you catch my drift. You know you've given her a safe place away from her past. And she's good for me? You were starting to be a bit cranky, Will. We let that slide for men over 70. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. She's bringing back parts of you that I hoped Tara would find interesting. Sadly, Anne got to you first, and Tara fell for Ronnie, and we all know how that turned out. She chuckled at my embarrassment, still not bothered by the mention of her former son-in-law. Everyone in town knew Carrie's thoughts on the charming man who had won her daughter's heart, but left when family life wasn't for him. "His back is his best feature, and I'm happy to see it," Carrie had said, and we all understood she meant it. Word did get out about Madison and me. Someone saw us together. We didn't try to hide our date, or someone figured it out from something Madison said at work. It was a strange feeling to see some people being judgmental while others welcomed my renewed friendliness. Sailorton had one small place called Poor Peter's Tavern. Tavern was a bit fancy. It was really just a small bar with one big table, two small ones up front, and a counter for the regulars. But the food was okay, the beer was decent, and it was ours. Doug asked me to grab a drink when we got back from walking the dogs. I had Lucy back, and true to my word, had gotten him a puppy too. He complained a bit about the house training, but it wasn't long before Doug and his new puppy were inseparable. I turned down the invitation. "You should go," Madison said when I mentioned it. I was going to let you know I'm going out with friends for a while and we might grab some pizza. Meh, I wasn't excited about the idea of a busy bar. It'll be good for you to get out. So now you're giving me advice? I was once the student. Now I am the teacher. No way you know that line. She laughed. I checked it out. I had been waiting for the right time to mention it. You're becoming a bookworm, she joked. My naturally cute self will prevent that from happening. But really, you should go. Anne's dad, Carl, and some other guys were gathered at the big table, including Patrick. I almost suggested we leave, but Doug waved back. Come on, he said. We grabbed a couple of drinks at the bar and moved over as chairs were pulled out. Will, several people called. I nodded cautiously. It was typical bar chatter, talking about traffic near Monmouth Park, the Pirates' chances, and politics. I noticed Doug's excitement as he jumped into the conversation. During a quiet moment, Carl looked in my direction. You know, my girl has run off again. I wasn't sure if he was speaking to me, but it seemed like it. No, I didn't. Jimmy Rutledge from Mount Pleasant. I don't know him. He was a banker. He got a job in Chicago and took Anne with him instead of his wife. Carl looked tired. You try to raise them right, he said with a sigh. But in the end, they make their own choices. I could tell he was really upset. He sighed and emptied his glass. Pete, he shouted. Another round? He gestured toward me, too. I glanced at Patrick. He didn't meet my eyes, but he wasn't glaring at me like before. Now, I could see sadness in his eyes. 19 years is a long time to carry such feelings. That summer turned out to be one I would remember fondly. Work settled down. I ended up on a new project team with a good manager. My home felt lively. I started reconnecting with friends outside of family. Madison and I found a good balance between spending time together and having our own lives without even trying. I was having fun on a regular basis because she enjoyed being close. I even liked revisiting old knowledge while helping her study for her GED. We went out often. Madison loved exploring shops and art galleries not to buy, just to look, and outdoor eateries where she enjoyed watching people and imagining stories about them. That girl is actually an international spy who has come here to create a cover story before being sent to Ukraine because her parents are from there and taught her Russian when she was young. Since she was talking about Ashley Frey, who was born in the same hospital as most of her family, I just smiled and nodded. I liked being outside, and I discovered that Madison wasn't just a city girl. That summer was one of the hottest ever recorded. Yet we spent weekends hiking along cool forest trails, me carrying a backpack filled with a picnic, and her with a light blanket to use as a makeshift table. The first time it happened, it caught me completely off guard. We were resting by a fallen tree during our hike. She was lying with her head on my lap, and I was absent-mindedly running my fingers through her hair, enjoying the quiet. Suddenly, she sat up and turned to face me, a determined look in her eyes. Without saying a word, she leaned forward, her face close to mine. The moment was unexpected, and I froze for a second before gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Are you okay? I asked softly, breaking the silence. She smiled, a little shyly but with a hint of mischief, and took my hand. I want to be close to you, she said. I nodded, not entirely sure what to say, but understanding her intentions. We stayed there for a while, sitting together quietly. She leaned back into me, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close as the sound of the nearby stream filled the air. After a while, she shifted, resting her head against my chest. Thank you, she murmured, her voice barely audible. For what? I asked. For just being here, she said simply. I smiled and gave her a reassuring squeeze. Always? The moment passed naturally, and we both eventually stood up to continue our hike. The connection we shared during those quiet moments stayed with us, deepening the bond we already had. It was a memory I would hold onto a time of understanding, closeness, and mutual respect. She dropped onto her forearms and lowered her head. Together we moved with the same rhythm. Go ahead, she whispered, encouraging me not to wait. I didn't hold back. With a loud cry, I felt a rush of feelings as our connection deepened. I leaned forward, hugging her tightly and enjoying the cool air on my back while I felt her warmth against me. I placed gentle kisses on her neck and shoulders. When we settled down, she traced a finger along my side, teasingly. In about half an hour, she said. We'll be glad there's a brook nearby. Seeing her flushed face and feeling the warmth on mine, I laughed in agreement. This was not the only time we found ourselves in such secluded spots. Madison sometimes looked at me with a playful grin and responded to my "where to" with, "let's hike to our special place." She added a towel to her pack. Later that summer, she passed her GED tests. One of the first things she did was email a picture of the certificate to her mother, almost as if to say, "Look what I did." Are you talking to her? I asked. She emails me, trying to get me to come home or ask for my number to bother me more. I ignore her. So no. I understand why. As summer turned to fall, many of her friends left for college, while some returned to high school routines. She began spending more time at home. On the rare occasions I went to Poor Peter's for a drink, she never complained but looked a little anxious when I got back. "I wish I could join you," she said. "So do I. Would you prefer I stayed home?" "No. It's just now and then." She kept busy at the stable, sometimes staying to share dinner with Carrie. I was glad about that. No matter her feelings towards her mother, and I agreed with her, she needed that connection in her life. I adjusted my outings to match her time away. "Madison, what about college?" I asked one evening. "I just finished the GED," she replied. "That was a while back. It's time to think about what's next." Will you take the SATs now so you can apply for next year?" "I already took them, but I don't want to think about it now. Maybe in a couple of years." "Were your scores good?" "Yes." I wasn't surprised. She was smart. "The county isn't far if you want to take that route for a couple of years." "Not now." Her voice grew tense. I started to mention application deadlines but decided to hold back. She had a determined look on her face that I recognized well. A month later, I brought it up again. "Why are you bothering me about this?" "I'm not bothering you, but you once said you planned to go to Santa Clara." "That was only because my best friend was going there. That was a while ago." "And where is that best friend now?" Her expression changed, and she decided to go to another room. Carrie hosted 2 holiday parties at the stable each year. The first was for customers. She called it boring. The second was for staff, former staff, and their friends. Most of her younger employees called that party amazing. Her recipe was simple. First, almost every police officer in town had either worked there as a teenager or had been told by the police chief, a former stable worker himself, to go set a speed trap somewhere else. Since Carrie stayed sober and kept a close eye on everyone, making sure nobody drove, it all worked out. Second, the food was plentiful, loaded with just enough salt, grease, and sugar to make it irresistible. Plus, there was loud music with a DJ keeping it lively. The indoor riding hall became a dance floor when the removable flooring was laid down and the rafters were decorated with bright lights. Third, there were lots of cozy spots filled with hay or piles of burlap. More than one couple chose to celebrate quietly while still being aware of Carrie's watchful gaze, which did not allow for careless behavior but seemed to overlook sensible choices. The only rule was, no drugs or you're banned for life after I call the police. This had happened a few times in the early years before everyone realized she was serious. Even though I was a former employee, I hadn't attended in 10 years. Now I found it funny that I was Madison's guest instead of her being mine. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching her with her friends who had just returned from college. It was a side of her I hadn't seen before. With me, she seemed a bit older, but with them, she was just 19. They laughed, took photos, sang songs I didn't know, danced, and drank from cups that were likely not plain juice. I noticed a few guys who were nearby, including Drew. He was mostly ignored, but not completely dismissed. 2 others were trying to get Madison's attention, and I could see she was enjoying herself. Carrie appeared next to me. "You okay, Will?" She leaned close so I could hear her over the music. I nodded. I noticed her gaze shift from my face to my girlfriend about 20 feet away. After watching for a few moments, she said, "They're not going to get anywhere." "I know." That earned me a curious look. She took my arm and led me toward the big sliding door that opened to the hallway. "Let's take a walk," she said. As we walked, she asked, "How do you know?" "I'm just curious." One of them tried to get a little too close on the floor, and she stopped him right away. I recognized that look on her face. It's a clear, "I'm not talking about this stubbornness I've seen before." We both laughed. "Besides, I think she's too honest. She'd talk to me first." Carrie nodded. "Yes, she is. And women can express a lot without words, so I understand. She's just having some fun flirting a bit. It's going nowhere. Are you jealous?" "No, I don't mind her having fun." Saying that made me think of something that had been on my mind for a while. I let it come out as we continued our walk. "Jenny, look at me!" I glanced up to see Carrie calling to a couple who had just turned the corner. Jenny didn't seem fully aware of what was happening. "Who is he?" Carrie asked the young man. "He's my boyfriend, miss." "Schaefer," Jenny replied for him. "And is this your first time sneaking off to be alone?" Carrie's question embarrassed them both. No," Jenny said, her face bright red. Carrie looked closely at her, clearly checking if she was lying. Then she nodded and turned back to me, taking my arm as we walked away, leaving behind 2 shocked and relieved people. As my thoughtful mood lingered, she stopped me. "Want to talk about it?" She guided me to a bench where she could see who was coming and going from the doorway. She's enjoying herself in there. I thought you weren't jealous. I'm not. I shook my head, trying to put my scattered thoughts into words. She loves sneaking drinks while listening to loud music, even if she'll probably regret it in the morning. She's dancing wildly with the guys, but I think she loves it even more when she's with her girlfriends. She's happy that her ex is around who regrets how he acted. She's enjoying the attention from guys at the party. I raised my hand to stop her from saying anything reassuring. Not because she wants to go out with them. It's just fun and flattering to be noticed, something she expected someday. I stared at the open doorway, even though it was too dark inside to see anything from the bright hallway. She's loving the chance to be 19, something her mom took from her. Her mom and that guy, Dave. I turned to explain. I know who Dave is, Will. Madison and I talk a lot. She should be at college doing all the silly things we did. Have you asked her about it? She didn't give me a clear answer. Maybe next year we can talk about it was the best I could get. Would you help her? Yes, I'd find a way to get the money, but I'm not sure she'd accept it because... My thoughts became clearer and made me feel sad. Going to college isn't just about being away from home, it's more than that. I felt her hand squeeze mine, a closeness I hadn't expected. Will, I want to share something with you that I hope you won't tell anyone. I run Bothwell because I love it. It doesn't make much money because it's not like those big racing farms in Kentucky. But I'm fine financially, so I can do what I enjoy. She looked straight into my eyes. If Madison goes to college, I can help you find the funds. And if there's any issue about money, we'll figure it out. She smiled, and it felt like we were partners in a secret plan. Christmas was a mixed bag. I could tell that Madison was thinking about her old life. She shared stories about the secret Santa celebrations she had with her friends, where they would exchange gifts and share stories about their new outfits. She talked about her uncle and aunt visiting for Christmas dinner. Now, instead of being with her cousins and friends, she was surrounded by older people. Doug stopped by briefly before heading to his family. We also visited Carrie and her grandsons because we knew they missed Tara. But I could see a hint of sadness in Madison's eyes, suggesting she had some regrets. You could reach out to your friends, I suggested. She shook her head. That's my old life. I really like my new one. She got Doug a warm fleece jacket because you're always saying it's cold. For Carrie, she picked out a new cleaner for her office because I've heard you say you need to replace it. The little boys got some fun toys. I received a complete set of Schitt's Creek on DVD with a card that said, at least update your taste in shows. I gave Madison a Kindle Paperwhite filled with books. My card read, a mix of old and new. She liked to tease me about my love for real paper books. I would joke back, at least it's better than rewatching New Girl. I'd even mention a made-up study about how not reading was bad for society. It turned into a playful back and forth, more fun than competitive. She turned on the Kindle and browsed the titles. I've never heard of any of these, she said. If you're in the mood for romance, try Random Harvest. For something short, maybe The Wedding of Zine. Many months later, after everything settled down, I received a text from her that said, so, the kind of guy who looks great in white loafers and a mint green knit shirt. Did DFW meet you? Haha. It felt good to know she had read at least one of the books I'd given her. It was a cold January morning. We had just finished bringing in a load of wood. I felt tense since we woke up, knowing today was important. I think you should go to college, I said, talking over her objections. Doug used to be a professor and says he can help you start in the spring. Schools usually have openings after the fall semester. Will, I kept talking. Money won't be an issue. There are scholarships and loans, and I can help with what you need. Will. She looked very determined. Why don't you want to go? I hesitated, not wanting to push too hard, even though I knew I had to. I had been telling myself it was better to be tough, because I worried she was trying to hold on to a moment that would only leave her unhappy later. Sure, she had a break from her worries when her mother upset her, but she could take some tests without leaving her comfort. That wasn't the same girl who once talked about her dreams of working for an international company and traveling the world. Because I like my life, she replied. I don't want it to change. Exactly, Madison. Can't you see? But she didn't. You want it to stay the same? What's wrong with it? I tried to motivate her, wishing I could convince her it was a good idea. I wasn't good at these kinds of talks and felt clumsy. Maybe that was for the best. You're making minimum wage. Don't say you got a raise. I know that isn't enough, I said as she began to interrupt. You won't be able to fully support yourself. I noticed her posture become tense. I didn't know I was a burden. I chose to ignore her response. And the girl who dreamed of getting her MBA could end up doing a basic job and have friends who are still in high school, while those you know now move on to other things. Some aren't going to school. That's true, but not many of those you're close with. They have different goals. So you want me to quit my job that gives me a bit of freedom, she said, always quick with a counter-argument. You want me to spend my time in classes I'm not really interested in, just to drive home and spend my nights and weekends studying instead of being with you? I made a tough choice. No, I want you to go to college, Allegheny, if you want. Or another school is fine and live in a dorm and experience it fully. I want you to go away to school. She looked stunned. You don't want to see me anymore? Of course I want to see you, but maybe it's time for something new. I felt like I had set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Wow, what do you mean? Madison, look at our lives. We spend time together and enjoy the outdoors when the weather is nice. We connect in a meaningful way. But apart from that, you go out with your friends, and I spend time with mine at a local spot. I knew I was making our life sound insignificant, but I didn't know how else to explain what I felt. That won't last forever. It's not my fault I'm not old enough. It's just 2 more years. 2 years of living in the same routine. 2 years during which you could explore and become the person you hope to be. Plus, the only change in that life would be eating burgers instead of having soda. She looked at me in shock. Tears filled her eyes and she turned away, quickly leaving the room. I heard the door slam and her quiet sobs followed. I felt sad, but I knew this was something I needed to do for both of us. Hours later, I sensed her presence. I glanced over from the TV to see her standing in the doorway, looking at me with red eyes. She said nothing, just stood there, hoping I would change my mind. I knew this needed to end. The fact that I was causing my own pain didn't make it easier. I accepted what I'd started. It's your life, and if you don't want to take chances, that's your choice. But even if you stay here, I think you should move back to the guest room. I still want to be your friend. Her face tightened, and she turned away without a word. A moment later, I heard the front door open and close firmly. Part of me wished I could take everything back. She could have her phone, and I could tell her it was okay to stay where she was for years. Or maybe one day she'd decide to try going to county, but an associate degree wasn't going to lead her to the career she secretly wanted. It wasn't just about the job. It was about everything that comes with being that age, including the not-so-fun parts. The struggle of applying for entry-level jobs that required years of experience, college loans, sharing a small apartment just to afford rent, eating cheap food. But I had faced all of that. At that time, I felt frustrated, but I later turned those moments into good stories to share with many people across America, especially with those like me in Middle America, not including the wealthy or the very poor. I wanted her to experience it all. Half an hour later, I received a text from Carrie that said, "Don't worry, she's here." I wasn't concerned about her safety. I trusted Carrie. I was more worried about myself. The next day, she returned, but she felt distant in the house, much like she had on that first day in February. Back then, it was fear, but this time it was anger. I could see it in her eyes and how she carried herself whenever I noticed her. 2 weeks after my life fell apart, she called me out in the living room. "So you win," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Since you're letting me go and Carrie can't keep me for long because Tara will be home soon, I had to talk to Doug. Like you said, I can't take care of myself." "I didn't let you go," I replied, trying to clarify. But she didn't acknowledge my words. "Don't worry about me. Carrie says she has a small fund for employees. With that and some school aid, I'll figure it out." I already knew much of this because Carrie and I had discussed it and visited Doug. At first, Doug seemed a bit reserved, but Carrie looked him right in the eyes. "It's the right thing, Douglas. I thought about letting her go from the stable to motivate her, but I worried she would just stay with Will and not move on. She needs to get back to living." They shared a quiet understanding, and then Doug relaxed and picked up his phone. By the time we left, Madison had a spot at Allegheny that she didn't even know about. An old friend of ours in the financial aid office was already working on a package to help her. We figured out how to cover the rest if Madison chose to accept it. The money was not a problem for me. With Anne gone, my expenses were low. The house was paid off, my truck was paid off, and I had a good job while living simply. Carrie also wanted to help. The payments would go through her for now because we thought Madison might reject help from me directly. "The winter term ends in 2 weeks," Madison said. "Carrie can let me stay that long and then I'll leave. So here are your keys, Will. You don't need to return those. I'm not letting you go." She dropped the keys on the table without saying anything, and then walked out. A month later, I sent a package in the mail, hoping that with time and a note, it would mean something to her. "Keep these. You know that sometimes people need a safe place to turn to when life gets tough. This will always be that place for you." Will, 2 weeks later, the keys still hadn't come back, and I hadn't received any message saying they were gone for good, so I figured that was that. "May I speak to Madison, please?" "Who is this?" "This is Tammy Strickland, her mother." There was a long pause while I took in this surprise. I hadn't heard from Tammy since her last visit. I guessed that their lawyer had thought better of rushing to conclusions or actions after checking with the police. She doesn't live here anymore. She's away at college. Tammy went quiet. Finally, she said, I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised. I've been worried. I didn't respond. Where is she? I won't say. I didn't know if Tammy could find out, but I wasn't going to help her. Will you give me her phone number so I can call her? No. I could hear her frustration. Will you ask her to call me? I won't tell her anything. I'll let her know you called. If she wants to reach you, she can. I added, if you give me an email address, she might prefer to use that. A couple of weeks went by. Will? Hello, Madison? There was silence. I waited, knowing she was probably trying to find the right words without hurting her pride. I decided I could make the first move. I'm really happy to hear from you, I said. I've missed talking. Yeah, I waited again. I emailed Mom, and she's been really pressuring me to see her. She emails me every single day. Uh-huh. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice sounded tight, as if she were on the edge of tears. I'm scared to go to Oregon for spring break. I worry she'll try something to make me stay, or that Dave will do something when she's not around. She keeps saying I have to come home, and he sent a weird email saying I misunderstood everything. Once she started, the words flowed out quickly. I thought about going to Carrie's, but Tara's home, and Carrie wants some time with her. I don't have enough money for Lauderdale because I'm paying for Kendall. And Dad is not helpful, plus I can't stand his new wife. I don't know anyone in Boston. And the school said I'm not a foreign student, so they're being difficult about letting me stay in the dorms over break, and the cafeteria won't be open, so I'm not sure how to eat, and... The situation hasn't changed. Try not to use strong language when you get back. She managed a mix of tears and laughter. I saw Carrie later that week. Will, I'm so sorry, she said after giving me a kiss on the cheek. I did plan on letting Madison stay with me to give you some space, but Tara called and she's taking time off. She wanted to be paid for it, but she misses the boys too much. I couldn't refuse. Of course not. I'll get through this. I found it strange. Madison still seemed affected by our breakup, yet she looked happy to be in Sailorton. I could imagine she felt relieved not to have to choose between Oregon and being alone at school. It felt like she appreciated having a place where she belonged. With me, she seemed careful and stiff at first, but as time went on, that faded into a calmness that was easier to handle. It helped that she spent most of her time at the stable, where she could work and let Carrie enjoy some time with her daughter. She also went out every evening, reconnecting with friends who had come back for the break. In one way, that was good. I wanted her to feel part of a community. But it also made me feel more alone. I threw myself into work and often found myself at Poor Peter's. One evening, Tara joined me at the bar. Hey, Will. Hey, tired of the kids already? Never. I miss them a lot. But Mom told me I should take a break and have some adult conversation. She thought I might find you here and suggested I say hi. Oh no, is she still trying to set us up? Tara laughed. No. She just thought you could use some company. I became serious as she did. Mom didn't tell me everything about your situation, she said. I just asked her why there was a somewhat grumpy teenager in the office, and she gave me the basics. I held my breath, wondering if she'd judge me for dating someone so much younger, but she surprised me. She understood my silence. I'm sorry I messed things up by coming home. I shrugged. No, you didn't mess anything up. I'm grateful for some company that isn't an old guy who just wants to share stories about knowing my dad. How about you treat me to some of this food? She suggested. I hardly have any money. Pete wasn't a fan of credit cards. Too modern, he said, meaning too taxable. Your date, are you sure your mom isn't? I was teasing her. She laughed heartily, a sound different from her mother's. She knows you're not my type. I almost joked about how different her ex and I looked, but stopped myself just in time. Her eyes sparkled with humor. She picked up on my hesitation. No, not tall, dark, and flashy. Just tall and dark. It took a moment for me to realize what she meant. It surprised me, but I got over it quickly. Now her laughter was warm. My ex was just a moment of confusion. Mom was right. He wasn't great, and I'm glad to be done with him. Though, she placed her hand over mine. That information is just between friends, right? Of course. She took a moment while Pete got her burger order. So you've got no chance with me, but if you need a little boost, your friend Tara could give you a tip. I raised my eyebrows, and she leaned in closer. Totally wasted on you guys. Trust me, I tried. She sighed. You know, the new vet, what? Then I shared the story about Avery. When I finished, she thought for a moment. Doesn't match what I've heard her say. She never mentioned anything about you two dating, but she has talked about you positively a few times and asked if I knew you. Sure enough, after Madison went back to school, I stopped by the stable just to say hi. Avery was there and greeted me with a big smile. "Hello, Will. How have you been?" "What?" In early May, there was a birthday party for one of Tara's boys. He really enjoyed it, as did his loud friends. Most of the adults seemed to have a good time. Carrie made sure there was wine and cheese and set aside the porch as a quiet area. For me, it was a mix of upset and anger, only saved from being complete despair by Carrie's help at the end. I felt upset when Madison came in with a young man. "This is Joe," she said. "He goes to school with me. I hope you don't mind that I brought him Tara." She glanced at me as she spoke. She didn't say, "We're a couple," but her body language clearly said it. I was fine being mostly ignored for the afternoon. I actually preferred it. It let me put less effort into acting relaxed. I knew this was coming, but I didn't realize how little time I would have to get used to it. The anger happened when Avery showed up. She greeted me just as warmly as before. I wasn't so clueless that I missed when she touched my arm while asking about her router. Over her shoulder, I caught Doug looking at me with raised eyebrows, surprised. And behind him, I could see Madison just staring. Moments later, she appeared next to us. "Hi, Avery. Where's Patrick?" "What? What?" Avery stuttered. "Oh, Drew mentioned you two were a couple. Sorry." Avery looked caught off guard. "No, I mean, we've gone out a couple of times, but I wouldn't say we're a couple." "Oh, my mistake. Just me being silly. I thought after so long it was something more." Madison's "after so long" reminded me of an old memory. I remembered being hurt right after Patrick's comment. "You can't hold on to women." Avery must have felt me tense a little under her touch. "I hope you're enjoying college, Madison," she said. "Nice to meet you, Joe. Well, let's step outside for a moment. It's warm in here with so many people," Madison said knowingly as she led me out. "We're not together," she declared as soon as we were outside. "But you see him?" I asked. "Sometimes." "Were you seeing him while you were seeing me, or did that start after?" "That came after. Look, Will, I made some quick judgments about you based on what others said. I'm sorry for that. By the time I figured it out, you were with Madison, and I didn't think it was wise to try to fix things. But you two are clearly done now." She gestured toward the house. "So, I'd like to try to make things right." "I thought you were with Patrick." "I said sometimes, but I want to see you again. We had good times, and there could be more." She slipped her arm through mine and pulled me closer. "Was that something women just do, or do they learn it?" "Are you with him?" I asked without thinking. Her expression changed, and her cheeks flushed with anger. "That's not your concern." I took that as a yes, but I couldn't be sure. Maybe my question upset her enough to make her angry. She could get angry quickly. Still, she had always been honest, and I was inclined to think she was seeing him sometimes. I wasn't sure why I had asked. Normally, I didn't care about people's private lives. Maybe I was trying to understand a feeling I had. There was something about how she held my arm that suggested she might agree to come home with me right then. Her expression softened. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped. I don't want to discuss other men, but I understand your worry since I did go out with Patrick right after we broke up. But I didn't cheat on you. I've never cheated on anyone." For a brief moment, the idea of bringing her home was quite appealing. Even if her curves didn't fit what I usually liked, they were enough to distract me from my bad mood. But it was only a moment, because I knew that by morning, I would be looking for a way to separate from her. I wasn't that kind of person. We didn't have a long-term future because I wasn't suited for someone who could judge so quickly. For a moment, I wondered how Patrick was doing with her. He had a lot of rough edges that could clash with her personality. Maybe being growled at was a small price to pay for what he got in return. Then I understood why I had asked that question. I would have guessed her answer was yes when Patrick hit me. He seemed too pleased that Avery had left me. His voice was too loud with excitement. I couldn't remember the exact timeline, but it felt like just a couple of weeks. I believed she never cheated on anyone, but that was a fast change. "I think I know why Patrick went after you, but—" When she reacted angrily, I raised my hand to calm her down. "No, I'm not talking about how you look. I mean that Patrick wanted revenge after I started dating Anne. It was clear he was happy to think he had won you over. The fact that you're attractive just made it even better for him. What I don't understand is you. And no." My hand went up again. "I'm not saying he isn't good-looking or fun." "Then what?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm confused about why you would listen to a guy who has every reason to put me down and not ask for my side of things. That's what I don't get." I didn't mention the part about being with him because we both knew I was thinking it. "You could have explained when I interrupted. "When you came to me in the stable with your mind already made up?" I shook my head and pulled my arm away. "Enjoy yourself with Patrick, Avery." I turned and walked into the house. It was hard to believe my mood could get worse after seeing Madison with Joe, but it had. I said goodbye to Tara and looked for her mother. I ran into Madison on the way. Was that on purpose? I asked. Of course. Whatever you and I had. What she's doing isn't right. As I turned to leave, she added, Will, there's something else. That you're dating Joe? I already knew. I'm not coming back to Sailorton for the summer. I'm staying at school to focus on the summer semester. Just thought you should know. On one hand, her interest in her future should have made me happy, and in a small way it did. But on the other, my mood sank into a deep pit. I finally found Carrie. I'll walk you out, she said. She took my arm in a way that was becoming familiar, even if it was still a bit surprising. She knows you're upset, Will. Yeah, I could see that, I replied sarcastically. It was clear from the, I won't be living with you if I can help it talk. She knows, Carrie said firmly, because I told her, right after I spoke to her about what she did with Joe. My surprised silence made her smirk. You're not seeing the signs, Will. You're sweet, but you really need to pay attention to what that was about, or the little scene I heard about from Douglas. She leaned up and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. You should find a girl and go out on a few dates. A few steps away, she turned back. Not Avery. She turned around again a short distance later. Not Tara either, for reasons you probably know now. When she reached her door, she said, There's more interest in you than you realize. A nice guy with a good job who isn't playing games. The issue is you've either been married, in a solid relationship, or so uptight that no woman would even think about it. Now that those problems are gone. She winked and went inside. A truce of sorts had been formed with Madison. A few weeks later, she called to let me know she had done well in her first semester. A month after that, she called again, seemingly just to check in and make sure we were both doing okay. In July, she said, I won't be home for the 4th. Some friends invited me to the Jersey Shore, but I talked to my mom on her birthday. That caught my attention. You won't believe it. She's getting a divorce. That was surprising news. The guy got caught doing something bad. She shared how Tammy found some questionable online activity that she initially brushed off as typical behavior. But then Dave got drunk at a barbecue and suddenly they heard Sarah Munoz yelling at him. Sarah was a year behind me in school, so she's basically just 18. So now Mom is calling to apologize for not believing me, asking if I can forgive her. I could sense her enjoyment. I told her I'd think about it. And will you? Think? Yes, forgive? Still considering. I don't see how I'll forget what she did. But I do miss having parents, you know? I understand. I had lost my mother when I was 22 and my father at 34. That absence hit hard sometimes. I think I'll start calling her Tammy like she's a distant relative. Maybe that will help me deal with it. You don't agree? I don't get a say in it. You'll find your way. You always do. The calls became regular, about once a month. So, Will, you're single. I glanced around as Lauren Frey and Ashley Frey took seats on either side of me. They were 2 of 4 sisters, and many guys nearby would find them quite attractive. They were beautiful and confident. Why haven't you called any of us? Ashley asked. Called you? You broke up with Madison a long time ago. Dr. Liachi didn't work out, so we thought we'd give her a chance to fix things. Not that we owe her anything, but sisterhood, you know? Plus, you've been seen with Tara, but it's just friends, right? So, it felt like everyone was watching my love life closely. Small-town women's grapevine. A month later, Lauren and I weren't in a romantic relationship. Instead, we were enjoying a close friendship, which felt special to both of us. I appreciated Lauren Frey for her humor, kindness, and beauty. She liked that I wanted to spend time with her without any romance, which she said was a nice change. We also enjoyed discussing books together. Lauren's sister, Ashley, took my choice well. She seemed upset for just a moment, and then laughed when I jokingly said, It's because your name starts with an A, and those names are trouble. Madison only visited my house during holidays. She spent the winter and summer terms at school, working hard to finish her bachelor's degree and then get her MBA at Berkeley. This made her visits even less frequent. I worried a bit about how to pay for her last 2 years of school. It would cost over $60,000 a year. But Carrie told me not to worry, and eventually everything worked out when Tammy made an unexpected offer. I hear you've been supporting Maddie, Will, she said during a phone call that caught me off guard. Well, Carrie Schaefer and I both. I spoke to Miss Schaefer. She mentioned it's mostly you. I accidentally told Maddie this, not knowing it was a secret. Oops. Anyway, Tammy continued, I haven't helped her much in recent years, but I have a college fund. Now that I'm divorced from Dave, I'm planning to move to California so Maddie can change her school status to in-state. I'd like to pay for her graduate studies. That sounded good to me. I spent 1 Christmas and 2 Thanksgivings without Madison while these 2 women tried to mend their relationship. I was fine with that. My sadness faded over time, turning into good memories. I still got short visits from Madison now and then, filled with updates about her school and her first job. She rarely talked about her personal life. She didn't bring up any boyfriends around me, though I suspected she was seeing someone. I didn't follow her closely online, but Carrie occasionally mentioned things that hinted at her life. The two of them remained close friends, even if Carrie's home was no longer a gathering place for us. Carrie's house became crowded as Tara agreed to help out at the stable. The place was small, and as the kids grew and Tara moved in with her girlfriend, Carrie would often show up at my door with treats. "Please, Will, I need a break from the chaos." Carrie and Doug became regular visitors. I sometimes thought about them as more than friends, but no, they stayed just good friends. As for Lauren and me, life settled into a comfortable routine. Neither of us acted like famous couples. We were just two people who got along really well, both in our time together and apart, without making it something bigger than it was. She never fully moved in with me, hinting that she loved her independence. While she wanted us to be exclusive, we weren't married, and I felt the same way. She helped me shake off my occasional sadness about times gone by and suggested great books that I almost always enjoyed. In return, I kept away the guys who were only after one thing, and introduced her to lesser-known books and translations that I loved discovering. We both enjoyed music, food, and quiet times alone. Still, I knew it wouldn't last. She traveled for work and would eventually meet someone who was everything I was, plus more. It was nice while it lasted, and I felt hopeful that another opportunity would come my way once she moved on. It was something Madison had given me without us realizing it. I heard the key turn in the lock. Madison had called me earlier and said she was passing through town and wanted to visit. "Nothing's changed," I told her when she walked in. "Where's Lauren?" she asked after giving me a quick hug. "We ended things a few months back," I said. "She felt like time was running out, and we knew I wasn't the right person for her, but this lawyer in Chicago might be." "Oh, sorry." She didn't seem too affected. It felt like our lives were drifting apart. "It's okay. We're still friends." "I got a promotion," she said. "I'm now a senior account manager. If I do a great job, they might even talk about me taking over a big account that involves international travel." "Congratulations," I said, happy for her. She sank into the chair across from me like she did when I first met her. "I wanted to visit one last time and tell you this in person." "Last visit? Why last?" I asked, confused. She scrunched up her nose. "Coming here every few months just feels like—" She trailed off, waving her hand as if to say I should understand. But I didn't understand. It felt like a punch to the stomach. She noticed my face. "Do you really want to keep this going?" "Why wouldn't I?" I replied. "Boredom," she said. I didn't get it. "You mentioned liking dating someone younger but not having much in common. Remember?" "I never said those exact words." "Maybe not, but that's how I interpreted it. You hinted that once the excitement faded, you might get bored with me. Are you going to deny that?" I felt a bit ashamed. "Well," she looked at me, expecting an honest answer. "I wasn't bored, but I realized I could have been eventually. Your life was just like it should be at that time, hanging out with friends and sharing pictures online. But it wasn't mine anymore. To be honest, that whole online sharing thing was never really for me." I tried to smile, keeping the mood light, even though I felt sad thinking back to those days. "I didn't want to feel this way about you," I said. "I wished to end things while they were still okay. Even if it made you upset, I wanted you to have your own life. So, I may have exaggerated a little. I figured that out later." "That was really clever of you," she replied. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "Because it let me leave angry, which meant I could move on easily. I think if I had stayed with you, I would have felt stuck. There were so many things I wanted to do, even if I forgot about them. If I had stayed, I would have started to resent it. Then it's good we went our separate ways." "Yeah," she said, thinking back. "College was really fun, especially when I studied abroad. Tammy and I have created a different sort of relationship. It's not perfect mother-daughter, but it's better now that Dave is gone. My dad is still not great, but that's his choice." She shrugged, showing she had accepted the pain. "I looked for my real dad," she said out of the blue. "Did you find him?" I asked. She nodded. "I have a name, but I haven't done anything yet. I'm trying to find the courage. I thought about asking Tammy what she thinks, but I feel like she might react strongly." "Maybe you should," I suggested. "It's your decision." I could tell she wanted more advice than that. "If you'll always wonder if you don't, then go for it. Just be ready for any outcome." She nodded thoughtfully. "I don't think it will bother me like it would have in the past. I'm not lost anymore. I have a job I'm really good at, and I've found some things I believe in and want to support." She laughed. "Doug and I have a lot in common." I smiled back as she went on. "I've lived on my own for a couple of years and realized I'm okay with that. But wow, I was so unaware of how hard it would be. I used to complain to my ex-boyfriend about it all the time until I got a few raises. We shared a smile. Ex? I asked. Yeah. We broke up when I started aiming for a promotion. I knew I would have to move for the job, so I didn't want to wait for that to happen. Where are you going? I'll be in the Pittsburgh area, moving out this way. That's exciting. Where exactly? To 83 Pine Street. What? I'm just particular about how I like my space. Is that okay with you? I suddenly found myself unable to speak. She smiled. Will, I'm not a young girl anymore. I've been on my own for years and can take care of myself. I've seen a bit of the world, and I want to see a lot more if you're willing. Then come back to a home where we're the fourth generation to live. I don't like your music, and I don't expect you to like mine, but that's what headphones are for. You've got me hooked on reading real books, and I even laugh at those silly TV shows you watch. I promise I'll watch them with you if you promise to go to art openings with me. And I wasn't being completely honest, she said with a grin, making a small gesture with her fingers. When I asked you about Lauren, I've been paying attention. Carrie and Doug are good at gathering information, and Carrie has talked me out of feeling angry. She got up and moved closer to me. 26 and 43 are very different from 18 and 35, and I never stopped caring for you during those years. Sure, I was upset for a while until I understood and spoke with Carrie. Yes, I dated others. Yes, if I can say it, developed feelings with a few of them. Not to make you feel bad, but to be honest. But no one ever made me feel as valued as you did. There was never anyone who made me feel as safe and appreciated, not even close. She paused and added, when I say I care for you, I mean I've loved you since I was 18, and I plan to keep loving you forever. Her expression turned soft. I just needed to finish growing up before I came back home. She leaned in and kissed me gently. I didn't hold back. I was stunned as feelings I thought were long gone surfaced from deep inside me. She held my chin so I would look at her. This is what I want, the man I've loved for almost a third of my life. Unless you can honestly tell me you don't want me, I'm here to stay. No more visits because I'm not leaving. Are you going to lie again? I didn't. I couldn't. I took her upstairs and let her have the right side of the bed. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.